DIARIES of War. Not Children's View. This is an impressive collection written by children from 10 years old. It was initiated by the Kyiv Palace of Children and Youth, but whole Ukraine supported the idea. Children are more sincere than adults. Their thoughts and feelings do not know censure. You will see that little Ukrainians have big hearts and like a musical instrument can tune the whole world to the compassion and patriotism rhythm. It is impossible to read this anthology without tears. The victory will be ours. Editorial team: Oksana Dobrovolska, Rita Kosyak, Nadia Iliek, Julia Skorobagak, Myroslava Zabrodska, Bodana Robacek.
How did I change during the war? I never thought that at the age of 13 there will come the time when I would have to think about my safeness. I mean, how? We all think that we will grow up, live our lives, and die our own death. But in our everyday life, the shells of death sometimes drops very closely. For example, during a pandemic, someone's grandmother, friend, or mother died. But we were not as involved in that. It seemed like that one catch us. And even now I also do not fully understand that I can die. When we came home from the bomb shelter to get some things, we noticed how the military started running around our building with machine guns. When we asked what happened, we were told that there would be a fire now. That the invaders have entered Kyiv, and no one will leave or enter the city. We sat on the bathroom floor and waited. Brother and sister were crying. Everyone was crying. I prayed. At that moment I did not want to think that I would die. Why am I going through this at the age of 13? I just wanted to faint, lose consciousness and to wake up later. But I understood that I am the older sister and should help. And it was unlikely that they could take me to the hospital. So I continued standing. It was incredibly difficult to stand. It was exhausting to wait. We decided to risk and go out to leave the building, despite the shouts of the soldiers to go back. The whole way, as we drove, I did not stop praying to God. There is a feeling that someone is holding you and hears you. And to this day, I still say thank you before going to bed. For everything I have. For my family, for the fact that I am alive, and for everything that I have materially and spiritually. Every day I spread light energy to our defenders and all of Ukraine. I became very religious. I began to believe in miracles and fairy tales. And most importantly, I am proud of myself. For the fact that when I was sitting on a cloud, before I was born, and choosing where to fly, I had chosen Ukraine. I know that this people will never stop fighting for freedom and will never become slaves. I understand that this is the strongest and bravest people. I am proud of these people and I am proud that I am a part of this society. This war made us all closer and stronger. We all united to win. And thanks God, the war revealed the wrong people. The ones with whom we have different directions. If there is no trust, there is no way to go together. Our lives will never be the same. When for a moment I forget that there is still war and it seems that I just went abroad, I returned to my life when I went to school, went out with my friends, even washed dishes. Now I can't go back there, and I'm so sorry that I didn't appreciate every second in my house. Even when I put the keys to the apartment on the nightstand, it was a great happiness. Irina Sasanova, 13 years old, Kiev, Lyceum N157, Literature Class Art of Words ITA-YUN Prez, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth.
I don't have a home anymore. I woke up from a strange sound. It seemed like Wolfpack was somewhere nearby, and for some reason they all started howling at the same time. What happened? I looked at the clock, only 5:30. Surprisingly, never woke up this early. And what is that sound? Suddenly there was a very loud explosion. I was terrified. Quickly go down to the shelter, Mother shouted. This phrase scared me even more. The thought that the war has started did not fit in my head. Even though there was ongoing war in the east of Ukraine for almost 8 years, but why did it start in the beloved native city? How? Why? Because of what? It just didn't fit in my head. Keep calm. Breathe in, breathe out, everything will be fine. It's quite cold in the shelter. It's good that we took warm clothes. I couldn't sleep in the basement, so I had nothing else to do but think, and those thoughts weren't happy at all. The war has started, and now what? What did I even know about the war? Fortunately, I knew about it only from books, and in books, war is a great disaster that spares no one. Not only soldiers who defend their native Ukraine are dying, but also civilians, children, women, old people. But why can't they live peacefully again? Why did the war creep into our lives so uninvited? I wanted to cry, scream, but no, I am strong. I will endure the pain. I will survive this. If I will survive, I must survive. All children must survive. Oh, how many thoughts did I had while sitting in a damp shelter to the sound of sirens and explosions. Do you know what I dreamed about? I dreamed that the war will end and I could worry again about what to wear to school. These problems seem so small and insignificant now. It's even funny how I used to worry about them. That's how it all started. It was the bright ending, although I only now realize that that morning of February 24th was only the beginning of the end. We are living in a shelter for almost a whole week, because the fight is going on non-stop. Lack of food, but we'll break through. I don't have a home anymore. It has burned down tonight. At night, a bomb hit and the explosion destroyed my house. Of course, today there are many who do not have homes, but I don't think I will survive this loss. The war changed everything in my life. Now it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, the main thing is that I'm alive. Now I know well how the sirens sound. I distinguish what flies above us. The fighter plane has its own characteristic hum. Now I can tell where the explosion, somewhere nearby or in another village. Now I know what an alarm suitcase, because I have it too. We sit in the shelter, appreciating every breath of a loved one, because it may be the last breath of life. I don't cry anymore. No, I'm not strong. I'm still scared. I just don't have the strength anymore. I pray in my dreams. I pray awake. Now I always pray for Ukraine. On the February 24th, in just one moment, everything has lost its meaning. All dreams and plans turned into one word: save life. Even if not your own, but save someone else's. Today I had a panic attack again. My whole body was shaking. I felt bad. Life flashed before my eyes. As it turns out, it was a happy one. There are also fights in our city, and I hear everything. I hear the whistling of bullets. I hear the groans of the wounded. I hear the cries of children next to their dead parents. I'm not afraid anymore. It doesn't matter if I survive, because what I see now will never allow me to continue to live normally. I will never be able to laugh again, walk happily through my native streets, because this picture of the street with bodies and blood will forever be imprinted in my head. I will never be able to dream again, because from now on the most precious thing for me will be the peaceful sky. The words, "good afternoon," will never have as much meaning as a wish of the peaceful sky. I will never again be able to complain that I was insulted at school, because it is such nonsense. I will never again be able to speak as I used to, because many words have acquired a completely different meaning for me. I don't have a home. There is only a burning city, and Mom is still alive, and Dad. Although Dad's life can end at any minute, because he is also fighting. Sometimes it seems to me that I don't want to live anymore, but I try to put such thoughts away. Today I lost my home, the last thing that reminded me of my past life. It no longer makes sense to stay in our hometown, and we decided to evacuate. And we left our native home, where every millimeter has its memories. We ran away without knowing where we were going with the things we managed to take. Someone ran from the war in slippers. Someone managed to take only a piece of bread. Everyone fit into the bus, although fit is not the right word. 3 people were riding on one seat. Everyone was running away. Everyone was running away from the war, which so uninvitedly braked into our lives. People were escaping, not caring about the precious things that they left at home. Everyone wanted only not to forget each other and to save life, even if not their own, but to save someone else's. We were also running, with long stops, because bombs and bullets flew very close. We lay on the ground, not knowing if we would get up. We were running away from the war, regardless of the many bodies on the road. The children didn't cry anymore, they just didn't have the strength. We just wanted to live. We were running through our native city and saw with horror how houses were burning. In one moment they have destroyed that was building for years. Now there is no time to think who is a friend and who is not. You help everyone, because you are human. An old woman cries at the feet of the soldier's already cold body. Let's go. He won't be live anymore. His soul is flying to heaven. Let's go. We will still live. We just have to wait a little. And the old woman tries to walk. Her legs do not obey, and people carry her in their arms. Where? If there is no sun, why continue living? There is no home. There is no city. Everything burns with the dire fire of war. We must live so that our children live happily, not like us. We were running. Here is the train that will take us out of this hell. It is covered in bullet holes, the same as our hearts. There is almost no room in the train. There are people everywhere. Everyone is escaping from the merciless war, packing home into one suitcase. Today we evacuated. Now we are going by train to Western Ukraine. It is very difficult to leave hometown, even if it is burning in the fire of war. We packed our home into one suitcase yesterday, but can we take the most important thing? How to leave home, where everything has its memories, where I had my first steps, where I went to school for the first time, where I met my friends, where I slept peacefully, where I lived, where I dreamed. Is it possible to take all my things with me, which remind of a happy life? We took very few things. A first aid kit, clothes for the first time, and the suitcase turned out to be full. Yes, we didn't pack my favorite chair, the swing, where I love to read books. We didn't pack the books, too heavy. The suitcase didn't fit the guitar that suits the picnic so much. It didn't fit in the computer on which we spent so much time to collect money for, and then every evening the whole family watched movies. We took almost nothing, because how can you put a home in a suitcase? There's no way. Now I realize how comfortable my bed was, because in the train we slept 3 on one place. I miss the autumn painting in the living room. It turns out that it was also precious to me. How changeable the thoughts about life can be. It is so hard to go, not knowing where, with packed up home into one suitcase. I want to shout to the whole world and cry, but no. I will be strong and I will endure the pain. I will survive, but I will never be able to live a normal life again. Because everything has changed its meaning. I will especially appreciate my home. It is so difficult to live without it. I will protect my home and be happy that I am at home, because I am a part of my home, and I cannot live without it. We arrived at Zakarpattia. We were accommodated in a school. The conditions were terrible, but... Mom, I said, entering the house, although it was hard to call this room a house. We lived in a school, in an ordinary school. Volunteers brought mattresses, divided sleeping places with curtains. This is how we lived. It was difficult, but we were alive, lived. Now that was the only thing that mattered. Nobody answered. I went into our room, if this word suits the place, and saw my mother sitting on the floor and crying. Mom, I said with a feeling of fear, slowly approaching her. Mom did not react. Mom, what happened? I exclaimed, hugging my crying mother. Dear, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but that's how it is and we have to live with it, my mother began quietly. Mom, dear, tell me, I can't, I interrupted. Dad, he died defending Ukraine, said Mom. There was a silence in the room that seemed to last forever. Oh, no. 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 This cannot be. I'm just sleeping, and I'm dreaming about it, I began to say, mastering the situation. Of course, I understood everything in my head, but my heart could not accept it. Dad. He is gone. How? Even yesterday, I imagined him entering our apartment, and we are all infinitely happy to live together again under a peaceful sky. And today it turned out that these are only dreams, and I will never see my dad again, my beloved dad. I will never hear his soothing voice again. I will never again be able to hug him, lean on his strong and confident arm. How could this happen? No. I'm sleeping, now I'm pinching my hand and I don't feel anything. I'm definitely asleep, and tomorrow I'll wake up and... I hugged my mother, and we cried together. Honey, you should calm down, life goes on. My mother tried to calm me down. What is life without Dad? I asked. Happily, answered my mother. Dad died so that we could have a happy and peaceful life. The sun was shining outside, children were laughing, birds were chirping, everyone was happy about because it was the beginning of the spring, but I didn't understand how they could have fun. My father died, and the planet Earth continues to rotate. In the evening, Mom and I looked at the photos on the phone with Dad. The last photo, where Mom and Dad are together, on Christmas Day, playing the game that I made. Here's Dad is calling on the phone. He got the task in a game to call a random phone number to wish someone Merry Christmas. How fun it was. I smiled, casually and bitterly. I will miss my dad. What am I guilty of? Why should I suffer? Ukraine will, of course, win the war, but this victory will cost loss of the beloved ones. In a moment, I felt ashamed. I should be proud of my dad. He is now my hero, but tears choked me. I was tired of thinking and worrying. That's how I felt asleep, with a photo of my father, who is no longer there. War. A merciless war broke into my life and took away everything that was most precious to me. Home, my native home, where every millimeter has its memories. A home that no longer exists and never will. Dad, my dear loving dad, whose soul went to heaven yesterday. Dad, who is no more and will never be alive again. The city, my hometown, where I took my first steps. The city where I lived. The city that was a part of me. The city that is no more and never will be. Mother, my young and beautiful mother. Wrinkles that ruthlessly covered her once young face. Laughter, my cheerful and sincere laughter, which I loved so much. Laughter that accompanied me every day. Laughter that is no more, and never will be. Dreams, my cherished unfulfilled dreams. Dreams that I don't have no more. After all, now there is one dream, to save life, even if not one's own, but to save someone else's. The author is anonym. The letter came by the post office of the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth. I dream of victory and peace. I woke up on Sunday with a belief that Ukraine will win. But it was air raid alert. My lessons have finished. I want to emphasize, I've got 11th grade from 12th grade system in history. I do all my homework every day. I play and feed home pets. But I heard air raid alert all over Ukraine. My friend and I are very close, and together it is easier to overcome this situation. I finished my math tasks and I am preparing my assignment for journalism class. I am writing this essay to point out that I really believe in our victory. Every day and during the preparation of mathematics and all subjects I dream about victory and peace. Maria Podvalna, 10 years old, student of the Internet Journalism. ITAYUN Press, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth. Not to die in a foreign land. For many Ukrainians who moved to Poland because of the war, according to my observations, the most difficult thing is that most of us never wanted to go abroad. If not for the war, Therefore, many suffer from the illusion that they have already made a sacrifice for which Europe in some kind of way is guilty. Shock, offense, breakdowns when they realize that Europe owes nothing to anyone. The biggest thing that has already been done is that Europe has changed the rules, created the conditions for us to pull through. But fortunately, this is not the USSR and not Russia, where there was and still is cult of loyal lazybones, who can get small but still piece of pie for sneaking. Europe is the territory for action, effectiveness, rationality, and efficiency. In a word, young princesses who managed to evacuate with their husbands were a little confused that the time of domestic kittens was over. Cleaning, baking pies and brains of fear husbands are in the past, and in order to survive, all members of the family have to work hard. There is no more housing under warrants and mythical benefits that you can barely survive on. For Ukrainians who lived here even before the war, the biggest difficulty and challenge was that they literally had to gain their right to live here. They built their lives here when Europe was not so hospitable. What these people have been through, it all can be understood from the way they hate lazybones for whom all the conditions have been created with no boundaries. Those who instead of digging into these opportunities with their teeth, whine about how uncomfortable they are here, how they don't have, how there's no help, and they are not led by the hand. According to my observations, it is difficult for the Poles because they are, first of all, normal people. They sincerely do not understand why their country and the European Union in general should give something to someone. And many of them really are not ready, that many of the newly arrived Ukrainians should not be pitted, because they are tough competitors, equal to them, not inferior in anything. It's easy to show the pity, it's difficult to compete. And this is a cool experience and a challenge for all of us too. But unlike many Poles, we literally not for a minute forget that a real war is going on in our country. And people, defenders, children are actually dying. Real Russian bombs fall on Azovstal. Real missiles are a daily danger to our loved ones, to everyone at home, whose voices can only be heard on the phone. And no matter how enthusiastic we can be about brutal and competitive struggle for survival, we still remember that at any moment we can lose the possibility to go back to our native home, to return to our beloved ones. That's just an observation. Experience. Pain and guilt in my heart. I so hope, I so want to believe that one day my experience, everything what I learned here, the result of all my painful transformations will be useful in Ukraine. I pray that the Lord will give me such an opportunity, so that I won't die before this happens, and I won't die in a foreign land. Elena Golubieva, graduate of ITA YUN Press, Kiev. And who is that on a photo wearing Vyshevenka? Don't pick up the phones. Everyone stay in their seats. A crowd of orcs broke into the city's self-sufficiency headquarters. In a flash, the center building was surrounded. In occupied Berdyansk on the 42nd day of the war, the internet did not work. The mobile service provider Kyivstar cable was cut off. Another mobile provider Vodafone occasionally worked, but for a very short time. The headquarters continued to provide the residents of Mariupol and Berdyansk with information and the most needed things. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the center's employees and volunteers unloaded the long-awaited humanitarian help from Zaporizhia: medicine, diapers, baby food, personal hygiene products, and food. The cargo has been awaited for a long time. Mothers came with their babies, stood patiently in line. Refugees continued to arrive. At 10 o'clock, armed men appeared. They immediately took all the volunteers and employees of the headquarters, led 40 people to the assembly hall on the second floor. Downstairs, in the lobby, there were refugees who came looking for temporary accommodation and clothes. Women and children were allowed to sit on chairs. The men were taken to the other side and placed facing to the wall, with hands behind the back as it was ordered. More than 70 people became hostages. Mobile phones were immediately taken away from those who were in the assembly hall. Then they were taken to the offices of the center for an interview. They politely conducted the inquest, forming a file on everyone: passport data, residential address, information about children, wives, husbands, parents, grandparents, distant and close relatives, friends. They were interested in views, position, thoughts about the current situation. Everyone's mobile phone was carefully inspected. Correspondence in social networks, contacts, photos in the gallery, information channels, posts by the owner and to the owner, posts by random people. They asked questions. And who is that on a photo wearing Vyshyvanka? How do you feel about the public meetings in Berdyansk? Who do you know from the nationalistic organizers? Why do you support the Ukrainian government? What is that drawing in your son's hands, with the symbol of Ukraine on it? Is what you treat him? And who is this man? What does he do? His last name sound familiar? We are now one country. Let us work together. Your headquarters is doing a good job helping refugees. Let's work together. They asked, wrote down, fixed, extracted thoughts. People were kept under guard for 5 hours. The rumor that the headquarters was blocked spread quickly around the city. The families of the detainees have been standing outside the center since 12 o'clock. They gathered in anticipation of when the center would be opened. They gathered in groups, talked, did not understand why. Why are they not allowed to work? First, they began to let go those who were on the first floor. They only wrote down their passport data and asked where they came from and why. They did not touch their phones. First, a woman with a stroller was released, then an old woman with a 5-year-old girl, followed by a mother with a 6-year-old daughter, then others. They decided to play a game. Everyone who was waiting for the humanitarian before the entrance was given 2 packages of diapers and 3 cans of formula each, all of which were delivered to Zaporizhia and were planned to be distributed from the Ukrainian side. Only at 3 o'clock they began to let go groups of silent women and men from the building of the center. While waiting for their loved ones, people looked intently at their faces, asked questions. Everyone was moved by the rumor that 4 employees of the center had been taken away. After some time, the detainees were brought out: Oleg Balaban, Viktor Kuzmenko, Alexander Fayev, Alexei Yurchenko. The hard drives that were taken out of the computers were brought out in bags. No one knew where detained men were being taken. And at the moment there was no information when they will be released. For more than a month, the humanitarian center helped the people of Mariupol, fed, to provide with clothing, looked for housing, provided medicine, gave advice, provided information about evacuations. For more than a month, the center was supported by people who were convinced that their work was necessary. Angelica Babich, volunteer, Berdyansk. Granny. Imagine an elegant lady on a black and white photo, dressed in an embroidered shirt and a wreath, with many ornaments, beads and a cross around her neck. Confidence, a smile and pride in the eyes. Photo of the middle of the last century. This is one of my grandmothers. It is the one who can see all the years of this war with her own eyes. Unfortunately, I don't remember my grandmother well. I remember that she sold candles in the church, had a hump on her body, loved marigolds, and when I sang to her viburnum bushes near the valley. She didn't like cats and cursed with beautiful Ukrainian words, go to ass. I remember how she talked, without a hint of a Russian accent. All my grandmothers and grandfathers speak beautifully, and when they read in Russian language, they used to say "что" as Russians do. So funny. I'm even jealous. I want to know how to lost the ability to read that. "Kto." But as far as I remember, I still know how to do it. For what I am truly ashamed in front of grandfathers and grandmothers. In front of the people who are fighting for our country. In front of my wonderful first teacher, who in junior high school explained us everything from the language issues to the meaning of embroidery. And in front of many more. And most of all, in front of myself. That I allowed myself to translate words in my head from Russian to Ukrainian and pronounce them rotten. I know the reason why it happened, although it would be better to say, I try to justify it. I really have problems with my own boundaries and basic concepts of manipulation. And I have conviction that I understood that language only to hear from them firsthand what kind of ugly non-humans my nation has as neighbors. I have birches growing under my windows, and damn if someone will try to set it free. That's my mini paradise. I will tear everyone apart for them. And by the way, during the evacuation, we met a family that, as it turned out, was at the other end of the street from us all this time. Young parents Valak and Katia with their 3-year-old daughter Elisa. They said that when 2 bastards came to their house, the Chechen one said, "How is a Russian soldier without a gift for a child?" He removed the machine gun, took out a cartridge from the store and gave it to a girl. Please do this, all Russian soldiers, normal gifts to our children, and now to us too, die as fast as it can possibly be. Gifts should be pleasing. And it will be amazing. Such manure is easy to squeeze out of life. And there will be nothing to fear, except to oversleep or eat something wrong. After all, even if I'm untalented, unwanted, or mentally not okay, I'll still be one of the luckiest, because I wasn't born Russian. And my children are destined to be Ukrainians, not sleazy killers. And then as it is, my grandchildren will enthusiastically listen to fables about the once existing bastard country and as goodness and truth overcame it. They will also say, Grandma Nuzia, it's all just fairy tales. And I will tell them that a fairy tale is our life in Ukraine. They will grow up and remember their grandmother maybe badly. But they will definitely remember her happy. Anna Mariko, 19 years old, Kyiv. I laughed, but I really wanted to cry. At first I laughed, but I really wanted to cry. There was an absurd silence. On the first morning of this spring we were overtaken. No one could have thought that, escaping from the city to the region, we would miss and try to save ourselves for a long time. At first I wanted to be silent and weirdly dance, just like Madonna. We watched news 24/7 and ran upstairs to the loft to reach the internet. Then our shed burned. If you close your eyes, you can touch the darkness, the methodical and intrusive pounding on the window. With a fist, the dog's shrilling cry and the slow realization of what it is. People was passing by and wanted to save our wooden house, but they met them with an axe and a crowbar. Then I dreamed for the first time. And then dreamed as if it was a dream, as told in a sleep. Of course, we have already heard the war in every household. Sound. We slept dressed anyway, but from the day the helicopter appeared, I dangled my leg to get up faster. Then we started to rotate and watch at night. It felt like darkness will bite my hand off. Falling asleep is scaring. There is no panic if you don't talk to anyone on the phone. It hums differently. But the sounds are not scary at all. If you peel potatoes, cook porridge for the dog, feed buckwheat to a native Kyiv citizen cat that used to eat only cat food, wash the dishes, solve Japanese crosswords, check if a hen has laid an egg, throw firewood. With fear resistance but still trembling hands. Then the phone connection got worse and worse. The TV was not working well. There was only one mirror left, in which no one could be recognized. I laughed and wanted to cry. I caught myself thinking that I don't know what good to think about before going to bed. From the window I could see how the church was burning. I really wanted either to sing or to just howl. It's luckily one of the nephews once left the puzzles at my grandfather's so I could put together them. The light is gone. There are occupied villages around here. The projectiles flies out very loudly. And then for about 20 seconds. While it whistles, you sit and think, where is it going to fall, and when it hits, shoulders relax. And then you cry half the night, because you are afraid and because you are alive. Broken formation of soldiers run through the villages. It's good that we have a dog, but every time he starts barking, running to the windows and listening to everything, only makes it worse. Transport doesn't run for a long time. The track is under the fire. The frost. The store, of course, hasn't been working for a long time. You do a lot of things, hoping in your head that you won't need it. Then the connection was completely lost. I was missing the fact that it's okay to be afraid. And the right hand is constantly numb. In a sleep. The sounds, meanwhile, were as if someone was taking out a metal door with a log. Or as if someone shakes a huge snow shovel. If you dare while sitting in the basement carelessly talk about going home soon, it will immediately be fire. Then we were trying to catch some kind of phone connection and ask hotline to evacuate us. Saw through the window how all over it was flying and bursting into flames. I believed that I would soon go home to Kyiv. The panic of the neighbors grew and affected everything living within the radius of the nearest houses. I never thought that everything that the orcs do could be concentrated in one place. I never thought that my grandfather would not understand why they don't bring bread to the store and that I always had a spare loaf of bread just ended. We heard machine guns. We saw that disgusting technique. Phones were hidden. I dreamed that I was executed by Lukashenko, trying to feed tigers in the middle of a shopping mall. We didn't make it to the evacuation the first time. On the question, "How are you?" I didn't want to answer anymore, because I wanted to write "Everything is fine." Quiet and so as not to deceive. Every day I fell asleep imagining how I was going home. One day I left. The road that used to take an hour continued for a day. I used to think that artillery shelling was such an artistic act. But I definitely understood and forever remembered what it's like. I used to think that a thermal imager is something between a TV and a heating device. And now I know exactly why it is necessary to send funds for this. Night, which I used to adored and was the most productive time for me, is now so difficult and always in the arms of anxiety. I used to like watching animals from the clouds in the sky. Now I don't want any more of these black snakes, jellyfish and crocodiles in columns of smoke. Only if it is Russia which is on fire. And in general, it doesn't matter. At least all of us could be alive. Anna Mariko, 19 years old, Kiev. Life in the basement. Come on guys, I'll see you tomorrow after school. Do your homework, because I haven't done it yet. I am on my way home. The cool evening kisses my cheeks, and I hurry to have a tea with goodies, letting my thoughts go somewhere far into space. My dad always buys something delicious with tea, and he makes an amazing tea. It seems that only I have such a family, and this thought makes me so happy. We were always friendly, sometimes we quarreled, we traveled a lot and lived an ordinary, normal life. 4:50 at night. I just went to bed, chatted with friends and finished my homework. Why does my mother wake me up so early for school? I don't understand anything. Get up, son, we are being bombed. What are you saying? We have a military unit nearby, maybe some kind of training? Barely getting out of bed, I try to find my phone. Hey guys, have you heard anything too? So, since that day, I have already lost track of time, lost myself, and hope for justice. I constantly asked myself, why, but no one could give me an answer to this difficult question. I didn't go to school in the morning, the next day either, and even a week later, my friends started to evacuate, lost phone connection with someone of them. We had a large cellar, but apart from cans and potatoes there was never anything in there. Under the whistling of shells, we made beds, and did everything not to freeze at night. They're not shooting at us, it's somewhere far away, I wanted to think so. I couldn't panic or cry, so I silently helped my grandfather and father do men's work. My dad is a creative person, he always liked to draw or do something with his hands. He said that it will not last long, that the war will quickly end with our victory. We all believed in it, these thoughts warmed our hearts. Days passed, we hardly left the basement, even during the day. Grandma cooked food, and when it was quiet, we quickly put our new home in order. It seemed that we were already used to the sounds of rockets, air raid alert and planes in the sky. Sometimes gunshots could be heard, and sometimes the silence on the street was ringing in the ears. During these days of the war, I could already distinguish the sounds of Grad rockets, bombs and howitzers. It scared my mother and she cried all the time. Our weekdays have become difficult. I remember one episode. Again, the whole family spent the night in the basement. It seemed that I spent more time there than in my room. My older sister Yasha taught the younger Elisa how to call the police. Alice is 5 years old. She thinks it's such a fun bomb shelter game to have more fun. I could see the pain in the eyes of everyone who understood why she was explaining this to her. Good afternoon, my name is Alice, I am 5 years old, I need help. I hope I will never hear that again. Never. It broke my heart when Yasha explained to her what to do if one of the adults shouted, shooting, rockets, chemical attack. Why should she know this? She is only a little girl, but I could see that she understood what was happening around her. My dad said that we need to leave Ukraine. That's what many adults believed then, but I didn't agree with that at all. I knew that Yasha would never take this step either. She will not leave our house, dog, dad, grandma, grandpa, and the city she loves with all her heart. Kiev is the most beautiful city in the world, said Yasha. I believed her, she knew exactly what she was talking about. I closed my eyes. It's hard to think about whether I and my family will open them in the morning, so I just pray to God. Wake up, son, we're being bombed again. A difficult decision was made almost instantly. Mother, grandmother, and Yasha are crying in the kitchen. It is still dark outside. We are leaving our house. I leave all my childhood and soul in this place, and I don't know if I will see my relatives again. Dad, grandma, and grandpa are staying, but I have to be brave. We drove from Kiev quietly, slowly, almost without stopping. Stifling, lack of water, lack of food. But no one complained, because at the stops, which lasted no more than a minute, people from the train platform handed over food and water, ordinary, simple people, but with a big hearts. Bags with pies, sandwiches, and pizza were scattered around the train passengers instantly as the train moved on. My family was lucky, we could all sit normally, because we were almost the last to leave. Already halfway, we heard the announcement that Kiev was closed for a few days for a curfew. This means that we managed to jump, as they say, into the last train. In a few hours, we heard from the news that Kiev is being bombed. The sun was shining outside the window, it was beautiful. I wanted peace and quiet. In those moments, there was no understanding of what was ahead of us and what we were leaving behind. War is terrible. It takes away children's childhood. Matvei Namchuk, 14 years old, Kiev.
Everything will be Ukraine. Today is March 24th. A month has passed since the beginning of the war. Now I am in Germany, where our relative took us under her wing. It turns out that we are native Germans. So, collected certain documents, we can get German citizenship. We are working on this now. Who would have thought that I would walk the streets of beautiful Bayreuth, learn about life in Germany and change my plans for the future like that? So I bring to your attention the life story of a 13-year-old Ukrainian German refugee. We are from Kremenchuk, so it was almost calm in our city. Until the last moment. Except for sirens. We cooperated with relatives and ordered bus tickets to Warsaw the very next day. 200 people gathered at that bus station. It turned out that our bus was postponed for a day. So on the morning of March 13th, we left Kremenchuk. There were more children than women. And they sold 2 extra tickets for the bus. Therefore, there was a mess in the sitting rows, and children had to sit apart from their mothers. It took an hour for all just to take sits. Our route was supposed to go through Lviv, but there was an air raid alert in Khmelnytsky, and we had to go back to Zhytomyr. And then to Rivne, and then to Lutsk. Our bus was not in the best condition. The brakes were broken, so we were making stops before each roadblock for half an hour. At the border, we changed the bus. And we were delayed at the customs for another hour and a half, because the Poles welcomed us very hospitably. That day, no one had a normal sleep, because we drove along country roads so that not to run into the enemy. However, after crossing the border, everyone fell asleep because of the feeling of the glassy road texture. On the morning of March 14th, we arrived in Warsaw. They ordered tickets with no sitting place to Berlin for the evening. Had a lunch. We waited for the train at the station for 4 hours. Asked volunteers. And then, 20 minutes before departure, it turned out that this train would not take us to Berlin, but to a city on the border with Germany, and we would have to switch trains. On the train itself, the Poles decrypted our tickets and said that we actually had seats. We were offered to spend the night at the school and gradually go by bus next day. They did not know that there was supposed to be a train that arrived in an hour. It was already full, so we sat on the bags in the corridor. An hour and a half later, we reached Berlin, where we were met by my 25-year-old cousin, who was supposed to be my mother's brother. We took our bags to the subway, then a tram, and then walked 2 blocks. By the way, public transport is free for all Ukrainians. We went up to the 20th floor and moved into the 3-room apartment of our relatives. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and Aunt Alina had prepared borscht with snacks for everyone. Almost everyone ate, but most wanted to sleep. It turned out that we had already bought tickets for the bus to Bayreuth, where our Aunt Raya lives, for the morning. Then another 4 hours to Bayreuth, a town in Bavaria. 2 of my mother's aunts met us and took us to their house. 20 minutes of walking around this city was enough to take my breath away with excitement. After settling into the 2-room apartment, my mother and I first of all ran to the bathroom. 2 days on the road somehow. At night, the rest arrived. Aunt Rai's son-in-law brought them by car. We have been living in Bayreuth for more than a week. Of course, time was not wasted. Submitted applications for registration. Memorized the routes to the shops. Started learning German. However, only I took it seriously. It turns out that it was very similar to English language. We were amazed by the city center. We visited the forest park. And in general, bypassed more than one district. The architecture is so well preserved here because during the Second World War, Bayreuth was considered an unofficial center of Nazism, so Hitler treated it with respect. Well, Kremenchuk, Warsaw, Chopin, Berlin, Bayreuth. A full Euro tour, right? My studies at school were suspended. However, I will probably be sent to the local school in the 7th grade. My active participation in the life of the Club of Young Correspondents has stopped. There are hardly any similar classes for future journalists in Germany. My Vietnamese best. friend is now in Italy. Her situation is almost identical. My father calls me every day and tells me how our cat Basia is doing. And I laughed all this way, as if I were crazy, even in that exhausting train. After all, smiling is better than crying. This is not the end, and I can only imagine my future. But I am sure that everything will be Ukraine. Katerina Pratsko, 13 years old, a student of Lyceum 11 Garant, a member of the Young Correspondents Club of the Kremenchuk Center of Children's and Youth Creativity.
Ruined Palace. At the end of March, during a rocket attack on the center of Mykolaiv, the Mykolaiv Palace of Students' Creativity was also damaged. It was this palace that was supposed to host the participants and winners of the International School Media Competition for the 25th time. It has become a tradition every spring to determine the best cadets and leaders of cadet associations in Mykolaiv. We are used to the fact that the Mykolaiv Palace of Students' Creativity hosts hundreds of junior correspondents from all regions of Ukraine. This year, many junior correspondents wanted to come to the competition, because in 2020 and 2021 they did not have such an opportunity due to the quarantine. But now this is the situation, says the Secretary of the National Union of Journalists of Ukraine, President of the International School Media Competition Gleb Golovchenko. All the windows were broken, and the blast wave was so strong that it even threw out them with the frames. Therefore, we try to get over the shock and determine the losses together. With the parents, we already took out 4 truckloads of glass. We never thought that there would be such a quantity of glass, says Svetlana Mykolaievna Sarenkina, director of Palace of Creativity. The city provides metal sheets for us to cover the first floor. On the second floor, parents and I will finish the OSB. But now the problem is the 3-4th floor, where you need to get to and more materials needed. Therefore, we will turn to Mayor Sinkovich and ask for help. We can only imagine how the women's team feels facing with such problems. The fate of teachers causes deep concern. In Mariupol during an air attack on March 19 died media teacher, the winners of the 24th International School Media Competition Lilia Gumianova, the head of the Junior Correspondents Association and Dreamers, the head of the newspaper Fairy House, of the Mariupol Palace of Creativity. Gleb Golovchenko, Mykolaiv. Women of War. Alina. With trembling hands, she asks for a cigarette, although she rarely smoked before the war, at least never with her son. Oh, and are you also from Ukraine? So does we're from Pokrovsk, it's on the border of Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk. My city is the most western point of the region. For some reason Lena says proudly and avidly smokes. Then, in the evenings, she talks non-stop about herself, about her home, her husband, the war, about how she got packed in an hour when 3 rockets whistled over her son's window. Rome met her unfriendly, a positive test for COVID in 10 days without fresh air in the isolation ward. As if fixing mistakes, the next 10 days will be spent in a cozy hotel in a big city. Her 15-year-old son asks to turn off the phone at least for the night, but she constantly monitors the situation. At home stayed a husband, a dog, goods from her own store, and also strangers. They were going to a safer place, but got into an accident. Lena's husband damaged their car and immediately took them to live with him until he fixed their car and his own. Lena is scared of Rome, of an unfamiliar language, of the subway. It is hard to believe that this beautiful, well-groomed woman never was abroad, not even in Turkey or Egypt. It's just that there is a lot of work at home. For more than 10 years, together with her husband, she has been building a house with her own hands. I couldn't believe that she has 17 hectares of vegetable garden and she cultivates everything herself, and the cellar is full of food preservation. The phone buzzes with air raid alert again. Do you want to go or not? Sounds on the other side of the phone. I really want. She tries to speak Ukrainian and constantly invites over to her home. After the war, when the evacuation of Pokrovsk was announced, she persuaded her husband to finish the car so that he could leave in time. The fear in the eyes instantly changes with an admiration of the beauty of the eternal city. A shameless seagull managed to bite her finger right in the middle of the city, and she laughs, talks, cries, all at the same time, and I catch myself thinking, how alive she is, despite everything. Western Ukraine will be next. Her brother found a house in the village, with no amenities, promises that she and her son and husband will have a whole separate room and 2 mattresses, but this does not scare her. At least this is Ukraine, at least to be with beloved ones. She says that she is not afraid of work and will start all over again, but not here, in a foreign land. They return to Ukraine. Larissa Bogdanova, journalist of TV channel Rada, Kyiv. To sleep and not to wake up. Before the war, I lived in Kyiv. Had a class at YUN Press. I woke up on February 24th. And one of the first phrases of my parents was, "The war has begun." And then I heard explosions. My friends too. We packed and went to my grandmother. The siren sounds almost every day. Sometimes twice a day. The scariest thing is when you hear how these planes fly. The heart goes into the heels. I also feel sorry for my dog. Before the war, he was very calm. But now he starts barking and shaking at every sound. But thanks to him for notifying everyone about the siren right away. It makes it easier for me to go to bed, that I will definitely hear the siren. It's still very scary to fall asleep thinking that you might not wake up. Shots can be heard in the distance. But our soldiers do not give up their position. It's very scary when your dad goes somewhere on patrol after a call, in the middle of the night. I hope that all this will soon end with the victory of Ukraine. Katerina Tsejelnik, 13 years old, Kyiv. Women of War. Katya. Today they went further. War is like that, it gives meetings. And immediately takes away, tears out with bloodthirsty claws. What has sprouted with warmth, kindness, native Ukrainian spirit, here, in a foreign land? Here is the other front. Women, with children, mothers, grandmothers, frail and sick, crushed, and, unexpectedly, courageous. She is with her husband. He was able to cross the border because he is a foreigner. She, kindly, quietly and calmly asks him to be more careful behind the wheel, forgetting how she pressed the gas when she was driving through all Ukraine. When it dawned on the 24th, hearing explosions, they rushed from their native Kharkiv. He is a medical student, seeing the fear in his beloved's eyes. He resolutely said, "Let's go, we'll have a trip around Lviv and return in a few days." 3 nights with no sleep, road. First there was Poland, a refugee camp, searching for a job. Work, and again the road that led to Rome. They could immediately fly to Cairo, where Mohammed's parents live. He is the only son. They would be provided with everything. But they don't need to. They want to do everything themselves. And war is not a reason to sit on parents' necks. Katia is the 5th in a large family. Mother, sister, 7 Monthold. Niece remained in occupied Kupiansk, no contact with them for the 10th day. This morning I noticed the bruises under her eyes, but still the same calm voice. We are standing on the pier, the sea is raging on both sides. The vizier's plane is flying over it to land, the airport is nearby. I think, when the peaceful planes will fly to our native land, my return ticket on the 24th is valid. Together, Katia and Muhammad try to free the fishing rod, which was caught by the cold stone pier. I involuntarily admire the young couple, who turned out to be older than me, because they comforted me every day that everyone would definitely return home, and life in native Ukraine would be even better. Larissa Bogdanova, journalist of TV channel Rada, Kyiv. After dawn. Morning. It's dawning. It's dawning. The edge of the sky is on fire. I sit with my arms around myself, as if protecting myself from something, and I read to myself Shevchenko's poetry, which we learned back in the 3rd grade of junior high school. I looked at the dawn through the window. It seemed as if I was expecting something. But it was quiet. It wasn't the first sleepless morning in the last few weeks. Actually, it was simply impossible to sleep normally, a kind of weird fantasy from not far past. I didn't want to sleep, it was scary to sleep. And if it was possible, then the dreams were terrifying. So even now, being waken up after the night terror, I sat as if I was waiting for a shrill "foo" to come out of the window, or a whistle, or a not so terrible, but such an alarming signal of air raid alert that penetrates to the bones and touches all the heartstrings. Maybe we should go back to the basement, it's safer and a little bit more quiet there. And that all, the whole country, since the world was made. It is washed and greets the sun. Turning my mind to poetry, it seems that I turn to my childhood. To the island of happiness and carelessness. This is something that is difficult and, moreover, impossible to take away. Confidence in this somehow calmed me down, and then I was just waiting for them to call me. Got packed. It's time to say goodbye to grandparents. My relatives. I promise, we'll see each other soon, everything will be fine, you know that, right? My mallows, apple trees, pond, do I really have to leave you, have to say goodbye? However, I will not say. That's it, see you and that's all. I am not saying goodbye. Parents are already calling the car. I know they are scared, just like me. But we can't stay here anymore. Grandparents refuse to leave their home. I have to leave home for the second time. A second time and a second home. I also had to leave my cat with the grandparents. He survived the long journey. The only thing that cheers me up is that, unlike me, he is not afraid and does not hide, but only sometimes sadly watches the birds through the window. Me too, I am now like this bird, which says, "Goodbye," to every tree, to which it is so accustomed, and flies away. Where will this bird have to go, leaving its nest? We are driving. This is probably the first trip without music playing in our car. Only the news sometimes come out of the radio. We were silent. Father was concentrated on the steering wheel, and Mother seemed to take a rest after staying up all night. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what or how. That's why I was looking out the window, where the still bare spring fields and trees were briskly unfolding. Many trees. The city was behind. Earlier, as a child, I imagined myself, looking out the window, as if I were acting in some music video for a lyric song. Now I feel like I'm in the Lord of the Rings movie. Who would have thought that orcs and other thieves would appear in front of us in real life? And they will be a real danger. I kept thinking about our apartment in Kiev. About school, classmates, friends. About the cafe in which we were going to meet with a friend. And outside the window, as before, the landscapes pass by. Someone's homes, too. Some doesn't have them anymore, and they don't have. Where to go back, I thought. Until now, I could not imagine what it would be like to put my whole life in a backpack on my shoulders. And it turned out that, times change and so does priorities. Therefore, now everything what is earned by me is in my backpack and all the memories are in my head. Although I still managed to take one family photo album with me. There were roadblocks during the trip. Many roadblocks. Now even superheroes do not seem extraordinary, they are among us. Who are these comic book characters compared to our soldiers, our volunteers? We will unite, we will continue to fight, as our great-grandfathers always did. Because we are Ukrainians, and that means so much. It was already getting dark when our path began to cover frozen drops of rain. They flew by like flies in the headlights, and meanwhile the windy road took us to our destination. Just before total darkness. We made it, said Father with relief. We made it, said I in my mind. In the Carpathians, everyone knows each other. Before we left, Dad called an old friend, and he called another friend who lives in the Ivano-Frankivsk region. And we were lucky that almost a stranger gave us shelter in his small house. The locals are extremely hospitable and friendly. Especially now, every Ukrainian helps another Ukrainian. It is an extremely warm and sincere atmosphere. It floats in the air as if a mother is speaking to a child. I'm here and now with you. Don't be afraid, everything will be fine. So you are no longer so afraid. Because you are not alone. No one now chose to become lonely. Did not choose to lose their home, friends, family, and even their smile. And this is perhaps the most terrible thing, when a person is deprived of the right to choose. I had a terrible dream. Even though my parents and I have moved to a safer place, I still have a bad feeling. Moreover, I feel ashamed that I feel psychologically unwell, even though I am actually safe. It's like survivor's guilt, and it's hard to get over it. Especially when a rocket flies at you even in a dream, and you cannot protect yourself or your relatives. Just wake up in a cold sweat, with a crazy heartbeat. And when I realize that it happened in a dream, I thank God for His mercy. The rocket flew straight at me, at my house. At that time I was celebrating my birthday. It was so calm, people close to me were around, they were smiling. But then I notice in the window a rocket flying straight at me, into my house. I can't do anything about it. I'm not in control of this situation. Mom, I'm scared. Not knowing what has happened, I woke up. Trombones buzzed in my ears, and a sharp, spasmodic pain seized my head, similar to the one that visited me before I left. Turning my poor head towards the window, I found that it was a dark night. Although the light was still on the first floor of the house, I couldn't go to sleep again. I was only thinking about my dream. Suddenly there was a desire to hide in the basement, where we spent the night almost every night with my grandparents. I am so worried about them. I need to call them right now. I used my hands to guide the chair next to me. I didn't have a bedside table. I found a phone that responded to touch with a bright light. It was 4:25. Okay, I'll call later. Around 6 o'clock I was still lying in bed with my eyes open. At that time, existential questions began to pop out of my head. Of course, a special place among them had future admission to the university and upcoming 16th birthday. Great, perfect time for this, I thought, irritated. It would be better to rest before starting online school classes, but suddenly my attention was drawn to the changes outside the window. I gave up trying to sleep. I got closer to the windowsill. In the dawn time everything feels different. I think that everyone felt this change in feelings depending on the time of the day. In the evening, or even late at night, the most secret things creep into our thoughts, our fears, worries. One word can open the door to the dark recesses of our personality. Now, when face is illuminated by the blissful rays of the morning sun and the spring cools the air with the smell of wet dew, who are you to give up to sadness and despair? Is there such a problem that has the access to all the depths of the heart and because of which you cannot enjoy the dawn? Look around, darkness. Here, in the sky, following the sun, the soul blossomed like a rainbow. Mysterious Ukrainian soul. It spreads out in all its colors on a clear, fresh sky. Although, maybe it was just a dream of mine. It was frosty outside in the morning, just as I was about to put my feet down from the steps of the terrace. The snow parted like the sea in front of Moses, and I immediately felt into it. Knee height. But such a dilemma could not stop me. I don't remember the last time I went for a walk. Although it soon turned out that it's actually difficult to walk around the lands of the Carpathian farms. Every small house is surrounded by a large circle of fence, and not even with a circle, but with an incomprehensible geometric shape. Some plots could be without a house, but with a fence, with sheep behind it. And it also happened that the houses were not surrounded by anything at all. At first glance, people seemed to be not rich. Of course, it is wrong to assume such an opinion, because what I used to think of as luxury, wealth, took on a different meaning here. Freedom, friendly relations with neighbors, nature. Even the bird songs here are special. Having already passed a fairly decent distance from my place, I began to hear that magical sound which surrounded me with a strange force. Tunes that were easy in terms of notation, but definitely not the sound. Moreover, I was convicted that no sound recording device created by man could convey what nature sings through the tiny mouth of a bird. However, there was something more than just singing. If you listened, you could hear a real tragedy no less than in the music of Hans Zimmer. In addition to this composition of pain and sorrow, added a strong cool wind, swayed the grass, shook the trees, from which the same birds flew tearing the air with their wings. In general, it was restless around, all nature was agitated and protested against human cruelty, merging into one symphony of sadness and immeasurable loss. Are you suddenly lost, child? The hostess, already elderly woman, came out to meet me from the house. Probably, noticing my short steps from and a slightly hazy look, she was worried. I was really a little confused, but rather because of the unexpected appeal. No, sorry, I'm from the city. Her eyes were slightly rounded, but a bittersweet smile flashed on her lips. So you're looking for something, honey? But what can I look for? I'm a stranger here, there's nothing for me to look for, I thought to myself. At the same time, the dialect of this lady seemed extremely interesting and unusual to me. Considering the fact that I planned to study at the university literature and philology, I had some scientific interest in this colorful pronunciation. And so I continued the dialogue. No, it's fine, really. Just went for a walk. You know, the air here is amazingly fresh. I looked around once more, and she answered. That's right. Poor children, there is probably nothing to breathe in the city. Although now, of course, this is not the biggest problem. Then we had a conversation for about half an hour. Apparently, people here like to talk, even if you are a stranger or just met outside the house. And the more, the better. And where to hurry in the mountains? In this city, everyone is always in a hurry, wrapped up in daily worries and work, and thoughts about how to do everything in time. And when to live. The conversation was really easy, although not on easy topics. Ms. Helena, that's her name, after asking about the latest news, told a little about her life, showed and called each of the 14 cats by name, showed rabbits, chickens, and the cow Chamomile, which just calved the day before. The newborn was named Victory. A small white cow with a black spot on her nose even tried to get up on her still trembling disproportionately long legs upon our appearance in the barn. There was something incredibly moving about these attempts to take a modest couple of steps. "It's okay, there's still a long way to go," I said to Victory. "The main thing is patience. Mrs. Helena invited me to come to eat banosh when I have the chance and left. The sun was reaching the edges of the mountains, so I went home. It was 10 in the evening. I was scrolling through the news on my phone when my dad knocked on the door. After that he looked and said, 'Aren't you sleeping, daughter? Then let's go, I'll show you something.' Father asked me to put on a jacket to go outside. It was a bit scary to think about going outside at such a time. However, the cheerful voice of my mother, who was also awake, calmed me, so I decided to dare. We walked out the door into the darkness. The moon had not yet risen above the horizon, so there was almost nothing visible. You won't even see the ground below you. Looking up, I could see the outlines of the houses around me and spruces. But what was impossible not to see was countless lights in the sky. Then I raised my head again. All around me, like flowers in my grandmother's and grandfather's garden, I was surrounded from all sides by the dawn of civilization, or, to put it less pathetically, by the stars. I was out of breath. Suddenly I felt like a tiny ant, helpless in front of such greatness. I felt dizzy in my head, and my legs trembled and could not hold. It seemed as if at any moment I could fall from the mountains, or from the planet, into the free space of space, the dark star emulsion. I wanted to thank my parents for taking me outside. It also suddenly occurred to me that, starting from a young age, they opened this world to me every day. Here and now they are my support as the stars in the sky. Even before going home, I once again looked at the stars and, saying with all sincerity a quiet, "Thank you." Today I had to go for groceries. Multicolored counters stood under the roof, forming a labyrinth with narrow passages so that this market could be called a place of close acquaintance with every not too careful passerby. Children ran in the puddles left by melting snow under the hot spring sun. Meanwhile, adults were running from store to buy groceries faster, and salespeople were cheerfully serving impatient customers, while they, of course, had time to chatter among themselves, politely exchange questions like, "How is your family? Is everyone safe?" In general, there was a hum, as if in a large beehive with bees. "Oh, it's so stupid. Someone released tomatoes from their hands, which then rolled along the street. Products could still be bought, even at twice the price." In contrast to Kiev, where shops in most cases could not fully satisfy the needs of the population, at least at the time when I left. The work of volunteers to deliver necessary products to those in need stood out. After the depressing impression of half-empty shops, it was huge pleasure to see, in addition to ordinary products, Carpathian teas, colorful glasses with tinctures, and homemade milk products. Also, surprisingly, Carpathian souvenirs such as fur products, wooden spoons and toys were still on sale. But something colorful, something extremely charming caught my eye. What was it? What seemed so pleasant to my eyes? There were so many of them, probably more than 50. Dazzling. White, ivory, colored. Made of linen, cotton, homespun linen, hemp, and all such different styles, textures. The embroidery. Each flower, each cross, made by the hands of some master, carries the DNA of our nation, written by a needle. I was simply drawn to these embroidery designs. I wanted to look more closely, to touch the matter, absorb the energy with which these wonderful patterns were sewn. Seeing that I stopped at the shop, my parents suggested that I go inside and even try something on. With great enthusiasm, I rushed towards the embroideries, which were neatly hung or folded in friendly anticipation of visitors. Among all the diversity, she was a special one. Snow white, decorated with black nets on the edges, with a flare on the hip line. And the best thing about this dress is the flowers. As if freshly plucked, bright in summer, they, together with other patterns, formed a perfect work of art. It seemed as if the design was inspired by the paintings of Katarina Biloker. These are elements of Petri Kivka painting, the saleswoman told me. Soon my parents bought it for me. Perhaps you will pass it on to your children one day, said Mother. I hugged my closest people. They must not have noticed the small drop on my cheek. I think it is necessary to admit, first of all for myself, that a significant part of my life was in Russian language. I could try to be self-deceiving, but that's the way it is. Well, recently something has changed. And the matter is one specific episode that I will probably remember for the rest of my life. It was a conversation during a walk with a neighbor's 6-year-old girl. We went to look at the pastures, where at that time a flock of gray sheep was kneading its hooves. On the way, my little friend suddenly stopped, looked at me carefully and asked, "So you're from Russia?" I stopped too. Despite my surprise, I hastened to answer, "No, I'm not from Russia, I was born in Kiev." "Why did you said that?" "Because I was told that they communicate in Russian in Kiev." To be honest, I was at a loss for words at that moment. I was confused by the fact that I was speaking Ukrainian, and a 6-year-old child told me such an unprecedented thing. Maybe my pronunciation was so bad that she decided to ask me, "Is it a matter of varieties of dialect?" Or maybe she confused something, or said it out of curiosity. Maybe it was enough to look for reasons when I knew that the main reason was in me. And I had to start with myself if I wanted to change. Probably, it was from that moment that I firmly decided for myself, now is the time. I don't want to continue the assimilation process myself. I don't want to become an accomplice or a victim in this crime. It's like asking yourself a question. Who am I without my identity? What does it generally manifest? When you think about this question, everything falls into place, doesn't it? This is a matter of ideals, principles, culture, and virtues. the matter of each individual regardless of nation. So I made my choice. Thank you, Adriano. Besides the blinking of my eyes and the roar of the wind outside, I could hear the ticking of the clock, which seemed to be counting down the hours to only one special time. I am lying on the bed, alone in the room. I'm still waiting and waiting for something. I want to go home so much. Echoes in my mind. No, it is not bad here at all, but what is a felled oak? It is no longer a full-fledged tree, as before with roots. It will always miss the lost connection with the native land that once gave birth to it. Will the tree take root in another land, or will it grow new? Roots? Will it rot in a distant foreign land? I so often think about people who left abroad by their own will or not. How do refugees feel? Probably the way I feel, but even further from home. Well, that's all. As if to run away from heavy thoughts and old panic attacks, I jumped out of the bed and sat outside. I firmly decided that I should relieve tension. So, first of all, it was necessary to concentrate on feelings and breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Deep breathe in. Slow exhale. The hum of the wind through the mountains. The rustle of hair on the shoulders. There is only me, my breath and nature. Only after these exercises I felt better. Instead, I clearly saw the sky, gray, like a blue wing. I even wanted to describe its taste. I would say, bitter and fresh, like mint. Scaly spruces, large and small, hid behind a shade of fog, just as gray. It even seemed that the clouds descended and sat down on the trees to rest. How beautiful it is here. Breaking from meditation, I unexpectedly began to notice droplets that flew to my cheeks with a light blow of a cool breeze, which made my eyes instinctively close, and my nose caught the aroma of the petrichor. Meanwhile, the drops became more and more frequent, until they turned into a thin gentle rain, it seems, the first in a month. It seemed to me that before that moment I had never seen rain in the mountains. Drop after drop. Dew appeared on my lips. Drop after drop. And the little birds, surprisingly, began to fly from tree to tree and address each other with their sonorous singing. Or maybe they, like the sky, mourned losses in the eternal cycle of life. Maybe the rain covered the fallen people with its blanket of divine nature, who also had a divine likeness, but whose lives were unscrupulously stolen. Cover, rain. Cry, wild pigeons. I am with you. But later the rain stopped, which is characteristic of any rain. Soon birds were singing from everywhere. This time it was a song of joy, a song of exaltation of the life-giving force of nature. Small, still childishly clumsy children went out for a walk. They ran forward with their boots on the damp ground, collecting rain dew. My heart warmed. The haze dissipated. On Saturday mornings, the market and shops were bustling with life. Here is a woman with a crocodile skin bag, with a burgundy embroidered scarf on her head, buying red gladioli. People were preparing for the upcoming holiday. They bought ribbons for baskets, towels, nice egg laying. To my surprise, I noticed a group of children with briefcases in their hands and on their shoulders, buying popsicles in packs. Probably, the schools have started working or something. The girls tried on coats. A young man carries a picture with swans in the middle of the lake. I was standing near the entrance to the bakery, waiting for my parents, leaning on a huge barrel, almost as tall as me, which seemed to serve as a table on the veranda of the bakery. From here one could see the rapid wide stream of the Black Chermosh. Its water, passing stone rapids, flowed past wooden bridges. It winds like a snake, a restless river. And people rushed about their business, perhaps not even noticing the beauty of this majestic endless movement of water, although they themselves resembled droplets of a rapid stream. Maybe they were in a hurry to live. Who knows? Probably, the only thing that could be said for sure was that everyone was preparing for Easter. And at home, in our apartment, the Christmas tree is still standing. Decorated, I thought with a bitter smile on my lips. Meanwhile, swallows flew over the water, harbingers of spring. Breakfast consisted of oatmeal, buttered toast and coffee. We had to eat quickly and carry things to the car. Father and Mother at the table were a little sleepy, but seemed to be in good mood. As far as we knew, it was already possible to leave. It is a little strange to leave this place. I have already managed to get used to the mountains outside the window, to my new acquaintances and wide expanses. However, after breakfast, the door opened as if by itself. The ruddy forest greeted us with copper shimmers under the sun's rays, and wild geese flew over it. The birds are coming home. Well, thanks to this house for shelter, Dad thanked, after which we went out into the embrace of the morning. Shivers passed through the body, either from the coolness of the spring freshness, or from the experience, and the gaze caught on two bodies. Mrs. Helena and Mr. Ivan came out to see us off. I'm sorry, I'm, as they say, very sentimental. Yesterday I saw my girls off, and today you are here, Mrs. Helena said through tears. Stay safe. The roar of the engine, and here we are again on the road. As if the mountain spring that I often passed while walking in the meadows, we descend from the mountains in a stream. We were driving in the car and talking about how wonderful it would be to come here in August and pick mushrooms. Probably, in this way we tried to distract ourselves from our worries. We were driving and knew that it would not be the same as before. The world has changed, and at the same time, no one had any idea what would happen next. I thought about it and admired the morning scenery. Just when Dad stopped to let the children pass with baskets, because today was the day of the custom to a warm grandfather, a banner with the image of a little girl and the words, "Thank God that my eyes have seen the morning of a new day," stood on the right. Along with the descent, it became warmer. Here, instead of spruces, fragile forsythia and beautiful magnolias were showing off around. And cherries. The cherry blossoms are finally blooming, I thought, yawning. I'm already feeling myself at home. And from this thought something suddenly became so sweet. Home is a great word. What could be better? However, soon I was already asleep, lulled by the serpentines, as in childhood. And I dreamed of a cherry orchard around the house, from which resounding children's laughter resounds. Maria Tartasyuk, 16 years old, School N309, student of the Art of Words ICA YUN Press, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth. A saboteur found in the school. February 24, 2022 is a day that no Ukrainian will forget. This date will remain in history as a memory of the genocide of the 21st century, the indescribable ruthlessness, the atrophied brain of the entire army and people. And also, like the day when all Ukrainians felt rage and understood what the war was about for 8 years. It hurts to admit it, but I also didn't wake up from a morning alarm, a cup of black tea and pancakes made by my mother. I woke up from the words, "Pack your things. The war has begun." These words opened a new chapter of life. I had a cool head and thought about the most necessary things. Quickly packed my bags in order to live at least a month in Volyn region, with our friend. My parents went to get some documents, somewhere to the hospital, but it didn't disturb me. I was packing my bags. Around 4 p.m., we gathered, but the whole city stood. Unbelievable traffic jams. "I won't take you out," said Dad. We went to the school bomb shelter. There, I, my mother, my grandmother, our friend, and my godmother spent the night with the children. But a saboteur was found in the school. Frightened, we went not far to my grandmother. We spent the night in basements several times. We were in Kiev for about a week. My dad calls, "Get ready, my sister and her neighbors have found a way to leave for Poland." Everything was very fast. A car arrived in 20 minutes. We went together with my mother. Others did not want to go. After a few hours, a shell exploded near the house where we lived and the windows of the upper floors were shattered. Then the others decided to go too, but they had to wait until the next day. At night, my mother, aunt and neighbors and I were in Novovolinsk, and in the morning we were already in Poland. Everything was fast. We spent 3 days with friends in a small Polish settlement. Then went to Germany. Now we are in the city of Bremen, in the center for refugees. We were told that it is one of the best, and they will find us an apartment in 3 days. The last definitely turned out to be false. Evacuation is a necessary step to ensure 100% of your own safety and the peace of your loved ones. This is not about a lack of patriotism or conscience or gratitude. It's about your conscious choice not to hide and live every minute of your own life. There are some talking about patriotism and selfishness. In my opinion, these are just people who could not leave. This is normal aggression that appears as a result of fear for one's life. And this aggression is absolutely normal. But it has to be directed somewhere, and so they become your personal haters. It is very sad to leave your native home, where you screamed, cried, laughed, thought that you were the happiest person in the world, and now everything is over. It is hard to leave your relatives and friends who are fighting, hiding in basements with them. You quarreled, hugged, kissed, walked, dreamed, made plans. And now you have to go and start a new life, which I think most people could only secretly dream about. But definitely not like that. Everything went wrong. This is an incredible endurance test. Explosions, sirens, shootings, basements, saboteurs, fears of living in Ukraine, fears of leaving, and then a completely new reality where you are nobody and you have no name. In reality, where you hardly understand anyone, you are ashamed to accept help, you don't know any rules, you don't understand the pace of life and even the bus schedule. Everything that was is no longer important. You already understand that. We were constantly running, fussing, trying to please someone, fit into some framework, lose weight, and prove ourselves right. And now you understand that the minibus driver who did not arrive on time is not so bad. A job you don't like is not worth those sleepless nights. Those extra kilograms are not visible at all. But the argument was not worth not talking to my family even for 2 hours. All these things, as it turned out, we came up with in our heads. Maybe to assert yourself? But this is just a film we want to wrap ourselves in to hide from the fear of real life, choices and emotions. Suddenly, something will go wrong. But everything has already gone wrong. We realized that everything is not so eternal and predictable. Life is too short to hide. A person is clay that molds itself. But now it is crumbling in the hands of many people. We are used to living our years like in the famous movie Groundhog Day. We don't need to look for non-standard solutions, new streets, new acquaintances, new hobbies. We don't need to understand who we really are, because life has already settled itself. But this old life has already been destroyed. Most cannot withstand such pressure. People are annoyed that someone spilled coffee near them, someone didn't give branded clothes, someone didn't give a discount, and someone didn't give up their seat in transport. We step on the same rake again. We are again looking for problems where there are none. But there is one difference. We already have experience of what could be worse. We already have experience. That shows that it ceases to matter and life is not as eternal as it seemed at first glance. However, we forget about it again. I want to live as usual again, without building new values. But this is a direct way back, if even such a situation did not teach us something new. After all, there is something more important. Things we didn't notice before, kindness that saves the world, joy and fun, family, friends, pets, just circling around, crying and screaming when sad, apologizing when you feel guilty. Just live. Just breathe. Just walk. Just talk. And people began to appreciate it during the war. Many of my acquaintances are annoyed by the calm and quiet pace of Europe. Europeans are not used to running. They know very well that their whole life is ahead of them. We have a different mentality, but I think we have a lot to learn. Enjoy life. It sounds so simple, but so unusual. Small things are not important. Having remembered this, most have successfully forgotten as well, simply feeling safe. I think that's the point. We will not be able to overcome our inner restlessness until we are angry, until we are grateful for such simple and everyday things. But the war showed that these things are not so ordinary. In fact, life consists of little things that cannot be replaced by anything. Nastya Velichko, School N193, Student in Journalism and Communication, Yunpress, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth. Tatiana Portienko, Student of the Internet Journalism, ICA YUN Press, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth. Our country today and in the future. Our heroes give their lives for Ukraine. They stand everywhere, thereby preventing the enemy from entering our land. While they are defending Ukraine in the east, peasants and farmers are planting fields. We have very, very many fields. Some people come to those fields to admire their scenery. There are not enough trees, so the sun is visible and easy to see. We disappointed the Russians because we do not go out to the occupiers with bouquets of roses. We will fight for our one motherland, Ukraine, until our last breath. The whole world supports Ukraine in its struggle for independence. We have a kind, intelligent, hardworking people. The hymn is very melodious, the language of a nightingale. Everyone is in their place. Peasants grow bread, workers work in plants and factories, producing a wide variety of products. Doctors help all people to be healthy. Although we had different opinions, we are united in one thing. I think about peace, we are bringing it closer as we can. We are united, so we will definitely wait for the end of the war. Together we are a force. This should be remembered. And this is my opinion today, and we know that the army expects support from each of us. That's why we help the army for free. We give food, collect money, send soldiers things that could help them in the fight against the enemy. The whole world helps Ukraine with modern weapons. Supports morally and materially. What are we grateful to? These countries. Legends are made about our Kornobayevka. Kornobayevka, our power is strong. I can't count how many times the Rashists tried to bomb this place. And we hit them. And hit them. The army is our diamond. Where else have you seen an army like ours? From where? She is one of a kind, unique. I wish our soldiers victory, so that they march again and again to Khreshchatyk on the Independence Day of Ukraine with a cheerful gait, with proudly raised heads. And all of Ukraine will gladly welcome its liberators. I believe that our scientists and designers will restore the Mraya plain and new rebuilt cities will rise from the ashes. Because our people are talented, they can do anything. On the first day at my new job, HR asked, "Did you learn something new? How do you feel?" Honestly, I looked at her with all the pain of shocked pride, which was thrown on a hot pan from the thought, how so? I have a higher education in Shevchenko, I have commerciant and Ukrainian television in my resume, 20-odd experience in journalism, and here you are, factory, assembly line, monotonous work. Instead, I've been desperately fighting the urge to knock on her door to ask me again, please. I will answer that until the end of my days I will protect my factory uniform, knife, individual number for marking the manufactured batches, a sign of responsibility for quality and exact quantity, as a shrine. I will never forget any person in my brigade, wise, intelligent, honest. And I will harshly put in place anyone who dares in my presence to say at least one unworthy word in the direction of the labor specialty. I will always now laugh at intellectuals who believe that they can go to the factory at least tomorrow. No, my dears, anyone can tap on the keyboard, even if they are not full of the mind of a monkey. But not every person can work with their hands at the factory. And the simpler the action or process at first glance, the more difficult it is to perform. I want to say to the HR lady, it's such happiness when things are going well for you. And wounds on the hands caused by mistakes hurt less, because you understand and you can, really. Well, let it be slower than them. I listen to their quiet voices. As they say that you can live anywhere, there would be life. And that a person must be willing to work, must endure. And they shut up. And I know why, because later, when you have worked well and suffered, such happiness, such grace pours into you. And if someone asked you at this moment about the meaning of life, instead of answering, you would look like a child with no worries. I want to tell HR every day now that I have realized, Ukraine does not need several dozen TV channels and websites. Our country does not need thousands of journalists, bloggers, Instagrammers, glamorizers, content and context managers, consultants and SMMs. It needs workers. If it makes sense not to sit on your ass for 5 years on a scholarship, and then whine, the diploma and useless old-fashioned teachers gave up, then it is better to acquire a specialty in a year or two and start working. I want to say to my personnel every day, I have always had deep respect for all people who have a profession and do their work honestly. I have always respected the workers of communal structures, admired drillers, electricians, gas workers, welders, conscientious teachers, miners, all food industry workers, builders. But now, my respect has become even deeper. It has become so strong. I don't just respect, I love. I bow. I want to tell her all this, but I go to the workshop in silence. Because at the factory it is polite to come 15 minutes before the start of work. Because I still have so much to learn. Alina Mangelis, student of the ICA-YUN Press, Kiev. Kaleidoscope. Through the looking glass of war. The year of the water tiger started off just fine. But then something went wrong. Why? It is also interesting to hear the answer to this question. So, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you on board to the plane 2022, The World and Ukraine. An interesting excursion awaits us, one moment from each country of the world, and we will also see what is happening in Ukraine at this time. The journey begins. France. The girl hurries to the restaurant to meet her lover. They have been together for 3 years. She found out that he wanted to confess to her. Norway. A little girl is celebrating her birthday today. Her parents gave her a doll that she had been dreaming about for several months. America. A man in a business suit chooses a necklace for his wife. It's their wedding anniversary, and he didn't remember about it till the end of the day. Like 10 times before. Brazil. People are preparing for the next festival. Cheerful. Music, bright, colorful, unusual costumes, festive atmosphere, people will be delighted. Poland. The brother and sister quarreled several times over the last piece of mother's pie. They don't even know that there were 2 pies. Italy. An elderly man walks through the park and listens to the birds singing. His late wife loved birdsong, and now every year on her birthday, he listens to the birds and imagines that she is near. Australia. A woman cannot decide on names for her newborn twins. David, Carl, Thomas, Lucas, James, Ethan, so many options. Germany. The girl found her brother, from whom she was separated, in an orphanage. England. The bride found out that the groom was cheating on her with their friend. Yes, with a friend, what a surprise. Meanwhile, Ukraine. War. Now. Here. Ukraine. Genocide. Now. Here. Torture of men. Abuse of the elderly. Rape of women in front of children. Murders. Rape of children in front of parents. Murders. Burning people alive. It's all here. In Ukraine. People are buried in mass graves. Bucha, Mariupol, Chernihiv, Borodyanka. People are buried in yards. Near the entrances. On the territories of schools or kindergartens. Or the bodies are simply left outside on the streets, because there is no one to bury them. It's all here. In Ukraine. Murders of civilians. Destruction of cities. Destruction of infrastructure. Many cities were simply wiped off the face of the earth. It's all here. In Ukraine. In the 21st century. In 2022. Now. At the same time. World. Somewhere there. Someone rushes to a date, celebrates a birthday, chooses a gift, prepares for the holiday, makes the bed, reads a fairy tale, kisses children on the cheek, wishes good dreams. Ukraine. Here. We wake up with the question, is everything over? Wash up and write to all contacts in the phone book, how are you? Are you alive? We have breakfast to the accompaniment of the news on TV, while scrolling through the newsfeed in Telegram and checking the list of missing people and social network chats. Maybe someone managed to find my mother. We sit in classes, have lunch to the sound of sirens, have dinner, wish each other a good night, because that's exactly what we want, peace, and go to bed with a small wish, may it all be over tomorrow. In my opinion, the world has gone off the rails. That's exactly how it went down. And you don't even understand, is it better to get out here and now and go on foot, looking for your way, or stay on board and go with everyone to an unknown end? Vladislava Olyanik, 19 years old, student of the Optical Mechanical Vocational College of Taras Shevchenko Kyiv National University, Borodyanka, Kyiv region.
Life in a blog. Okay, I need to update my blog today, I said and turned to my phone. Today, February 23rd, 2022, I prepared the most delicious salty cheesecakes. I will definitely share the recipe with you friends later. I am posting a photo of how beautifully it looks on a plate. Even my cat wanted to try a piece, so while I turned away, he pulled one piece of cheesecake off the plate. I posted laughing emoticons and put the phone away. In the evening, as usual, the news was broadcast on TV, talking about the number of sick people, fires, and accidents. Not interesting at all, so I turned off the sound and occasionally glanced at the screen to see if the cartoons had started. I started getting messages from my blog. Some asked for the recipe for cheesecakes, and some shared what they made for the day. I smiled at the screen, because I really like to read what subscribers write. It's some kind of online magic. You can share your impressions about books, new purchases, walks somewhere in the parks. I made a new post where I posted a photo of a sleepy cat and signed it, "Good night," and went to sleep. I could barely hear the rustling of leaves and the distant cries of the neighbors, but all the sounds were mixed and, on the contrary, only lulled me, and the sickness added to the weakness of my body, so a sweet sleep enveloped me. But once again brilliant ideas came to me at night, so I had to get up and write them down in a notebook. "Oh, how bright," I shouted, turning on the light. "What time is it now?" I looked at my watch. It was almost 5, so I decided to quickly write down ideas for the blog and lines for the poems in my notebook. Boom. Something loudly sounded on the street. what it is. I asked out loud and went to the window. It was still dark, so I couldn't see anything, but in a second the sounds repeated again, but louder and several times in a row. Fear filled me and, probably, my whole room. I could neither say anything nor even move. The only thing that managed to see was a crying mother who ran into the room and said, "Dear, the war has begun." I decided to write a text post on my blog first. "Friends, what's going on? What war have they lost their minds? How are you there? Are you going to go somewhere? I probably do." Then I began to pack things. Most importantly, took a notebook with my ideas and thoughts, my cat and his favorite toy, and a bunch of clothes, which I could barely fit into the suitcase. When I sat down on the suitcase, tears rolled down my face. I was leaving this house for the first time. Or maybe not. Go and try your luck. Life is written before birth, so maybe I will still survive here, in my city? But I couldn't decide, because again my mother ran into the room and shouted just one word. "Let's go." The sound of the car engine, we exchanged glances with my mother and she pressed the gas pedal. I cried for another 10 minutes and decided to distract myself with a post on my blog. I took a photo myself in tears and signed it. "I'm running away from home for the first time in my 16 years. And how are you doing?" It's a bit ironic, but I don't want to lose myself in the first place, so I decided not to stay silent. A lot of comments started coming. The majority of frightened teenagers, namely girls, readers of my blog. "We have already left. We are going into the unknown. We are still at home, but we can hear explosions. It is quiet so far. What happened?" It also calm, but what, do we need to run somewhere? Perhaps it was really necessary to stay at home and wait at least a week. Or maybe 2. We drove in silence. I didn't even look at my mother. We stopped at a gas station once to buy coffee, but we didn't succeed because the queues were too long. We drove for a long time. The road was exhausting, but in the evening we arrived in the Lviv region, where my grandmother lives. "I'm in a new house. I'm starting to settle down," I wrote in the blog, but without even putting things away, I felt on the bed and felt immediately asleep. It feels like I slept all week and never woke up. The blog page must have died out, but the desire to do something has disappeared. But today, after 3 weeks of this war, we woke up in the morning to the terrible news of my neighbors. "Hello, Luba, that's my mother's name. We are running away because a shell hit your house. I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's true. I can even send a photo." "What?" answered my mother. "The house is gone," was the last thing the neighbor said and hung up. The only thing that came in a minute was a photo of a house that really doesn't exist anymore. It was a little blurry, so I couldn't see which rooms might have survived, but I still had hope that my room was intact. I put the photo on my page with the caption "My home" and turned off notifications. I didn't want to hear anything. I didn't even want to cry because of this terrible news. I just lay on my right side and traced the pattern on the carpet with my finger. I understood that I had nowhere to go back and nowhere to live, so I went to the gallery and looked at photos from home and decided to post them online. This was my penultimate blog post. Complete apathy has taken over me, so now I am not alive. My soul has died with my home. I decided to write a few words on the page. My home no longer exists, and so does my soul within me. Your Zoya will come back sometime later when she can take it all in and understand, so turn on the notifications on my blog and live. Enjoy even a simple cup of tea. Bye. Sophia Dolishkin, 15 years old, Literary Class, Art of the Word, YUN Press, The Kiev Palace of Children and Youth.
Abandon and run away. The warmest moments always happen at home. Here you are lying under a warm blanket, and through your sleep you hear your mother's voice waking you up for school in the morning. "I don't want to," I say in a sleepy voice. "No, my daughter, the war has started." "What?" "No, it's not true, let me sleep some more." "Dear, don't joke. Let's run away." I don't remember how I got out of bed, how I woke up so quickly, but I started collecting things very carefully and slowly, as if recording every moment of my childhood. The first thing I got my hands on was a teddy bear, which I found in a store under piles of scarves. It's my travel talisman, so I can't live without it. Especially when it gets lonely, I just hug him and tell him about all my experiences. And he just keeps silent, as if he wants to answer me or tell me some joke from his childhood. But we are still sitting in silence with him. Somehow, a bracelet appeared on my hand, a gift from my father on February 14th, another talisman, the most precious in my life. So gradually, I threw things into the suitcase and just lay down on my bed. I run my hand over my blanket in a flower, twist on the slightly creaky bed, and my eyes saw the ceiling. The stars that have been hanging on it since I was born, unfortunately, do not shine, because it is still daytime. I looked down at the red curtains. I liked to hide there as a child and always sneezed from the amount of dust on them. A rather cramped apartment for 6 people has never seemed so dear to me, and that stout oak tree that can be seen, barely looking out of the window, seems to say goodbye to me with the rustling of leaves, but tears are rolling, I don't feel anything anymore. That's how you need to leave your whole life here right now. All warm memories, how my grandmother brought canapes with butter and sugar, how I was dancing to my favorite music to forget about the bad grades in physics. Leave all the tears shed in the bathroom and leave all of myself, my voice, children's laughter, crying. Let me wait, I will come. We will all meet again. Before I calm down and start a new phase of life, I want to thank everyone who was by my side during this period and did not let me give up. In addition to everything that our volunteer staff combat Motanka, those stories will be left for later. I really did Motanka. Starting from the 3rd day of the war. Daily. Many hours a day. The simplest. The first 20 days alone. Made only 100 or so pieces. Because you can't do much between trips to roadblocks. Then I started making angels, make them faster, and it turns out more, because the boys asked and asked for amulets. And then people started joining and joining. Some stayed for several days, some longer. But, thanks to their desire to help, the number of our charms has long exceeded 1,000. Sometimes I remembered that I wanted to capture these beautiful people in memory and in a photo, and asked someone to take a picture of us. Sometimes there were many days before this and it was simply forgotten. Therefore, not all bees even got into the frame. At first they did it to our ward battalion. Then 2 more. Then for the armed forces. Then the Motanka became a kind of currency, with which we wanted to thank our friends from other volunteer centers. And so every day, without a single day off. Why combat? Because these Barragan dolls are dressed as if in a military uniform. Strong and unbreakable. Stand confidently, because we all have to stand made with love and a request to heaven to protect everyone's life and save Ukraine. The fabric on the skirt, sleeves, and cap is the fabric from the military bags in which the gas masks were stored in the bomb shelter. The gas masks were simply taken out and thrown nearby, and after the first day of my stay in that warehouse, I realized that it was a natural fabric, and that's exactly the kind of quilts I want to make now. It was my own therapy and my own way to at least start doing something instead of reading the news for hours. What I will remember most, from this line of work, is the day when the lights went out. A room in the headquarters without windows was complete dark. And with flashlights on our phones, we still spent the planned 3 hours of work. Or maybe that day when we brought hot lunches for the local self-defense group, the boys were simply eating in the open air, put their weapons in the corner of a self-made table, and one of them took out his Motanka from the pocket near his heart, put it next to him and said to me, "It's our treasures." Or maybe when I ran to the dentist, and there was a handsome boy from the National Guard. He recognizes me, smiles, takes out my Motank from the same inner pocket near his heart, waves it, puts it back, with the words, "Everything is okay, take care." Maybe. These Motankas do not have crowns, braided braids, ribbons, necklaces, beautiful embroideries, all the things that I did before the war and loved so much in Motankas. Everything will be after the victory. On the first day of the war, we planned to go to school and work, but in the morning my mother said that we were not going anywhere, because Ukraine was being shelled. Then they started shelling our villages. We hid in a storage room several times a day, and later we hid in the bathroom. We were joined by neighbors whose apartments in our building burned down. With them was a little boy, a cat and a guinea pig. Then we all hid together in a common shelter, because the Russian military entered our village and started shelling our houses. The next day, a neighbor took us to Kiev by car. We were lucky, but unfortunately some neighbors were not, their cars were shot. We left things in the apartment, but our acquaintances and friends found clothes for us. After some time, it also became dangerous in Kiev, and we came to Albania with our friends from the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth. Yesterday we were informed that our house burned down. We are safe now, but we will definitely be back. We don't have a home, but we will come up with something and manage. Because we are from Ukraine. Tatiana Kazovska-Kosova, Crimea, Kiev. An alarming suitcase. Mom, which suitcase should I take, blue or brown? Well, actually speaking, it doesn't matter if everything fits. Did you put my favorite toys away? I so want them to go on vacation with me. Of course. It was a wonderful evening on February 23rd. My family had been waiting for this vacation for so long. My parents had been saving money every month for the dream trip to Egypt. My younger brother and I were already imagining how in a mask and flippers we would discover the underwater world of the seabed. He happily helped my mother pack a resort suitcase. But suddenly the world turned upside down. I usually wake up at 7 in the morning, but the morning of February 24th became special. After all, it was on this day that we woke up to a phone call that informed us that there is a war in Ukraine. War! Can you imagine? No, I still can't believe it, especially at the moment when my mother started packing another suitcase, but only then, it was already an alarming suitcase in which all the necessary things were supposed to fit. Mom and Dad were fussing around the apartment and seemed to be trying to get a handle on the situation. They constantly called someone and looked at us with fear, without explaining anything, either out of shock or out of their own confusion. A voice from the TV announced to the whole room about the martial law in our country. It was not just scary, it was unbearably painful and unclear. What's going on? We didn't go to school, our parents didn't go to work. Mom moved the suitcase for the 5th time in 2 hours and tried to stuff something else into it. Dad, with an endless list in his hands, ran to buy food and medicine. My fins, masks, summer clothes quickly flew out of the resort suitcase. It was the first time in my life that I saw my mother so confused and scared. She tried to calm us down, although she herself did not fully understand what was happening and how to resolve the situation. The final blow was delivered by the sound of a siren, with which the windows shook and the heart jumped out of the chest. "You have to hide," said Mother, and pulled us by the hands to the basement. The way from the 5th floor has never been so fast. Since that morning, the basement is our second home. Adult residents of our building quickly organized its cleaning and arrangement. We got new beds. We were introduced to such things as a kettle, heater, kerosene, and probably for the first time, our parents allowed us to eat Mavina, unhealthy fast food. Time seemed to stop, the days became the same. We constantly monitored the news on the internet, downloaded new applications, and were afraid of every sound. What can we say about the noise of fighter jets that appeared more and more often over the city? Mom charged her phone several times a day in order to be constantly in touch with friends and relatives who were in Kiev, Kharkiv, Mirorod, and Poltava. With each alarm we texted to close one, and the first question sounded traditionally the same: "Are you okay?" And only one chat of my mother's acquaintances confused her, only it angered and annoyed my mother. Yes, they are our older brothers, relatives from Russia, and here the mistake is conscious and fundamental, namely Russia. I have never seen her like this, angry, stubborn, persistent. It seemed to me that the phone was going to fly into the wall. She, either because of her patriotism or because of her journalistic skill, tried to reach their consciousness. I filmed news videos, took screenshots, gave examples, but in vain. "They are zombies," Dad constantly emphasized, and in the end this cute correspondence with relatives stopped. But the dialogue with friends continued. I remember how on the 2nd or 3rd day, my mother shouted loudly at someone and insisted on leaving the city. As it turned out, it was her student, Lisa. She probably felt some kind of responsibility, whether it was fear for everyone who was in danger at that hour. I heard how she reassured the girl's mother and promised to influence her decision, and I remember her first smile in a long time, when Lisa called her and said that Kiev, streets with soldiers, explosions and danger were behind her. Mom then kept the phone out of her hands and waited for her call to make sure that the girl was already at home. But she never called, she didn't answer SMS, and again my mother was noticeably nervous. For hours later, I dialed her number and the girl told how in front of her eyes, somewhere on the way out of the Kiev region, a column of Ukrainian equipment was completely destroyed by a Russian helicopter and that by a miracle their car survived. As a future journalist, Lisa told everything down to the smallest details, how she filmed all this, how scared her aunt and the driver were, and her mother cried for the first time during the war. "You could have died." Later, her video in TikTok will gain more than 2,200,000 views and thousands of likes, but Mom is not happy at all. Mom. Constant correspondence in the first 2 weeks continued with another student of Mother. The war found him in Kharkiv, where he got a job. Every time we were worried, we wrote and called him. Dennis could not get out of hell for more than a week. He, his girlfriend and friends, as well as his beloved dog, were always in the basement. We went up from time to time to the apartment to bathe and take food. The shelling was constant, the boy recalls. He wrote when he was already here, "I'm fine, I'm at home, let's sleep." And then he disappeared for 3 days. As it turned out, the boy slept as much as possible and came to his senses, but when we saw him, we did not recognize him. The once smiling and always friendly positive young man had the appearance of a 10 years older and serious young man. We mostly talked with my mother's friends from Poltava and Mirorod. Just as our cities are one region, they ran to the basement at the same time. It was from there that correspondence was conducted. What? Where? How did it happen? Over time, media resources began to cover information less and less, to talk a lot, as in the early days, so living examples and stories of acquaintances were the most reliable. Our region became red on the map more and more often, worries intensified, people began to die. I remember how my mother hurried to work, because they as a team had to be in time for the burial of the first offender, a young guy, 20 years old, from the district. When the sirens sounded, she stood at the cemetery with a bouquet of flowers, and my younger brother and I were waiting for her in the basement. I remember how my brother would sit down to draw postcards for our defenders in his free time. And when my grandfather started volunteering, going to the front line, and my grandmother's house turned into a volunteer collection point for things and food, he started writing letters to the soldiers, wishing for God's protection, strength, and health, and adding 100 hryvnias from his own savings, signing, "This is for you, my protector. Be sure to buy candy for your children when you return home victorious. My brother is 9. An announcement on Facebook about a missing friend who lived in Bucha became a big worry for my mother. According to his wife, since March 4th he has not been in touch and has not made himself known. She left for the west with her 2 small daughters. She was afraid to stay in that hell. I saw how my mother was flipping through search groups and looking into every face, asking friends from Kiev who work in the Ministry of Emergency Situations, where can to find any data. And the day before the liberation of Bucha, she had a dream, as if this Talik is returning to his native village and everyone is applauding and smiling at him, but no one approaches, does not hug, and he goes. The same morning, a phone call informed my mom that he was found, and a long pause after what we heard made us understand that he was dead. On that day, the same picture flashed on all TV channels, more than 10 men half-naked, their hands tied and a bullet in the head. These were men from the city's security forces, tortured, exhausted, brutally killed, among them was Talik. My mother cried for the second time during the war. Unable to stand the constant night sirens and running to the basement, my parents decided to go to a village 25 kilometers from our town, where it seemed quiet and peaceful. Indeed, the day was warm and calm. For the first time in many weeks, we put on pajamas instead of tracksuits for the night, hoping for a good night's sleep. Until this moment, I had usually seen and heard fighter jets, but this, close and loud, or the first time. 5 planes are so loud that it felt that hey, we're just lifting the roof of our house. The buzz is incredible. Grandma ran in a panic to open the basement door. Dad just ran outside to try to figure something out, and Mom quickly threw away the clothes that we were trying to put on in the dark. In those 30 seconds, she knocked us to the floor twice, because it seemed that one of the planes, about to fly into our room. Finally, we got dressed, as it turned out later, not in our own clothes and inside out, ran out into the garden and just stood there holding hands. The mute silence was broken by the younger brother's question. "Mom, are we going to die now?" "I don't know," Mother barely spoke. She cried for the 3rd time. We stood like that for another 15 minutes and constantly crouched down. When we heard a rumble just above our heads, it seemed like an eternity has passed. The terrible hum began to die down and recede, but no one took off their sports suit that night. In the morning they found out that it was our fighters. The boys made a heroic effort and shot down 2 rockets near the grandmother's village. But we never found a restful sleep. Our parents can't find it even today. Every day they rush to work and call at every siren so that we quickly hide in our second home, the basement. And they are also very worried about their acquaintances from Kharkiv, who have not been in touch for 3 days. Their home was taken over by orcs. When the villagers came to the house for the first time after the shelling, they saw a terrible picture. Everything in the house and in the yard was turned upside down. In the middle of the yard there was a fire and their 9 little pigs were waiting for their cooking. When they asked to take something of their own, at least food, they were given a short answer: "Go away while you're still alive." For 2 days they wandered around the dilapidated huts and again decided to go home. They promised the daughter, who had left with the child since the first days of the shelling, that they would not answer the phones. When they returned they would call, and they didn't call. They haven't called for the 4th day already, even if everything was fine. The horrors of war continue. In 2 hours in the basement, I told you only a few days of my wartime life. The anxiety seems to have passed. I return to the apartment. I will call my mother, tell her that everything is fine and go through the things in the alarming suitcase, because it is already warmer outside. I need to take summer clothes. Maybe the ones I collected for Egypt will be suitable, because summer is coming. And I don't have to fly anywhere for a long time. Ilya Tikhonov, student of the Television Journalism Department of PR Technologies of the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth, Kiev Region, Mila. I'm afraid it won't be too late. I lie down and cry, and I don't know what else will happen. Fell asleep. And I see endless steppes, and a people called Scythians. They were the first ones here, but there were some ahead them here too. I look, I have wings, and I think, flying. I fly through time, through people and their stories. And a new morning, and with it the fog opened a raging river. This is the Dnipro. And in a distant land, they are sailing towards us, brothers and sisters. I became a cradle. I swim to them, swim with them to those 3 mountains and the river. The river carries its secrets to us, and with it I too, because I joined it. The day that was yesterday is new. I am already a small child in the temple. What is in the temple? Because the glorious Prince baptized the whole principality. But the gods of ancient times will not forgive such a thing. A few terrible days. The princes know no pity. But kill them. Please. Let there be none. What divides us all will be. Woke up at the Golden Gate. But what is it? Grace? Smart rules, yes. But despite this, it is scary and not bad. They also say that he stole his father's merits. The next day and war again. Prince, please calm down. And again it's a quiet day. So what? Lithuanians. And the quiet time has come. I live, but here I am flying again. And the storm tears me, the whirlwind pulls. Running from the rider. Because they robbed the house, took wives, killed the children, crushed the husband, those terrible people. But there is a glorious man. Sharp blades can only be seen and again silence all around, we live. And I run again. I look at my hands, but the hands are not mine. But the beasts. I run on the steppe in the golden land. I run and see a hut, a second, a third. And he and my family. And he and the young boys who hold their father's weapons. I'm glad they were there yesterday. But what is it? They read the words of their glorious hetman. Strong, wise, steely. And the people are pale. Why, my family, are you like that? I'm here, I'm with you. Oh, now I understand. I see them, these strangers. Those who swore in brotherly love and chased the evil coward. We were bought. They were bought for help in battle. Day New day. How painful. Now I am a woman. I stand in the field and reap it. I reap for the master. For that, the descendant of a rotten sable. And again the day is foggy. I am a serf woman. Again. I am under the master again. And what a comedy. And he is under the master. And that gentleman is called the Great Russian Tsar. But our good Lord. I went to the field at the age of 8, and already at 13 the Lord saw me, and I serve in the rooms. I have children, a husband, and a terrible sin. There are 3 children out of 9 women. For this, I have a cow, poor God. And again sleep, and morning. I'm already old. Although I'm a cat. I sit and look at the little children. They are happy. And do not know what it is. Parents are happy, so are they. All. The houses resound, freedom. They gave the begged will. The next day began bloody. The Tsar was overthrown. I was a mouse in the rooms, seeing myself alone. And a new morning comes, and life is new again, and morning. Again. I saw that there was a state, and there were Germans, and Russia. I saw a war. The woman is thin, I drag the young man, I drag, because I believe that my son and husband will be helped. There too. The next day I am already sitting in the trenches. Because I have no one. Then it is easier, but I was kicked out of school and went to the factory. I take care of my dear daughter as much as I can. But there is nothing in the store. The next trouble. I am a child, and I am going somewhere far away. Mother cries and gives instructions, says that everyone is sick now, that atomic power will defeat us all. It's a new day and new forces, it's clear and warm. Why? Because I am in Ukraine, free and strong. In my Ukraine. Sleep and morning, students were beaten. The beginning of the war in the east of the country. I fly through sleep, through disagreements. Woke up. I really woke up. Here I am not a bird, not a mouse, not a poor woman. I am real, so what? A war has begun. A new war. You know what's the scariest thing? That tomorrow may be too late for someone. I am afraid of emotions, and they are very difficult for me. I hug a person, feel warmth and support, and then for 3 more days I can't shake the thought that it could be my last time. For me, for him. These are terrible thoughts that eat from the inside. Unfortunately, they have a basis. I go to the guys who are recovering from hard battles and preparing for battle again. I'm trying to joke, I'm trying to raise morale. I'm taking them the underpants that you handed over from Frankivsk, the gingerbread that the children made. Boys are scary, I'm afraid of them. For a month and a half, these people have been looking into the eyes of death every day, like an outstretched hand. They are very strong, because they do not lose heart and rush into battle again. I ask what they need, how can I help? The shoe is sewn with a splinter, the leg is intact. But I need new one, I write down my name. I'd like a backpack. Because I'm walking, shows a gray sports civilian backpack, the one I grabbed somewhere in the battle. We will have it all guys, what we don't have we will find. Just don't lose faith. They believe in us very much. We have a lot of support. I have a golden team of volunteers. I never ask from above, I understand. And those names in the notebook, you know. I make a cut in my heart when I don't have time to find something for someone, because he doesn't need it anymore. I am infinitely grateful to each and every one now. I know that material resources are exhausted. But now we are writing history not even for ourselves, for the next generations of Ukrainians, who, God forbid, will not know what Russia is. One big evil will be less in a world. But most of all I am afraid that it will be too late. Veronica Bondarets, 16 years old, Lyceum N144, Kiev.
When the war ends. My name is Lisa. Today is the 237th day of the war. I believe that our enemy is very insidious. He wants to take our people and territory and defeat us. We have to fight, help the armed forces and refugees. And even if you are a child, you can help. When the war is over, I dream of improving my drawing skills, going to school, seeing my friends and, of course, finishing my studies in journalism, as now with ease and a baggage of new knowledge about journalism. Liza Sedek, 11 years old. Student of the Internet Journalism, ICA-YUN Press, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth. We will change together, me and my country. The war caught me at home, in Kiev. I lived the life of an ordinary child. I went to school, on classes, met with friends. But that day everything changed. I started living a different life. Like my parents, I constantly thought about what would happen next, worried about the fate of Ukraine and its capital, the majestic, beautiful Kiev. In the first days of the war, at the sound of the siren, together with my father, mother, brother and cat, I hid in the corridor. In those moments I felt fear and hatred. And what if they hit my house or the house of my relatives? Maybe I won't see my classmates, teachers, neighbors anymore. But the anxiety was over and we started watching the news again. At that time, the flow of information poured on me almost around the clock, and I, watching and reading the news, asked myself the question, why should the whole country suffer because of a few people? Children who want to go to school and hang out with their friends are now sitting in basements praying that their families will survive. Adults are doing everything they can to help the military free our motherland from the enemy. I changed during the war. Began to think differently. I understood that war brings only death and darkness that engulfs everything around. Now, when I go out, I see people who have gone through what our family has gone through and returned to their hometown. They try to smile and live on, go to work, study and just appreciate what they have. Together, we believe that we will drive the orcs out of our land, rebuild Ukraine and start living even better. I believe in a renewed Ukraine and will follow its daily changes after our victory. We will change together, me and my country. Sophia Michael, 15 years old, student of the Journalism for All, ICA-YUN Press, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth.
The superpower of parents. On February 24, 2022, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, announced a military operation to prevent the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. After a few minutes, missile strikes began across all Ukraine. For some Ukrainians, this was foreseen, but still unexpected. Ukrainian and foreign media have been predicting the approach of war since the fall. We didn't believe in it, or we were simply did not want to believe. However, the pressure increased every day, especially in February. Training sirens were turned on in cities, bomb shelters were checked, it was recommended to pack an emergency suitcase, the embassies of many countries of the world took their diplomats to Lviv or abroad. Everything hinted at the beginning of war. The story of my war began 12 days before it began, on February 12th. In the morning, I called Nastya, my sister, to exchange news and arrange a trip to a stand-up show dedicated to Valentine's Day. Without exception of our own achievements, love stories and couples, we touched on the topic of war. That day, I reread all the informational Telegram channels I followed, and the news was disappointing. The White House called on U.S. citizens in Ukraine to leave its territory within the next 24 to 48 hours. Vitaly Klitschko reveals that the objects of critical and social infrastructure of Kiev are working in the mode of preparation for work under the best situation and, as is known, information about the concentration of Russian troops on the Belarusian border with Ukraine. It scared not only me, but also my sister. After a disappointing conversation, parents called in a family chat duo. In a worried voice, my mother asked if we could talk, and I suspected that something was not right here. Nastya joined the video chat and parents began to implement their how to make children leave Ukraine. Slowly, with light pressure, my mother told us the news, emphasized that they were worried about us and asked us to go abroad. They drive to work from the Zhytomyr region every day, covering about 120 kilometers one way, and traffic jams before entering Kiev are a normal situation. But recently there were less and less cars in Kiev every day, and my mother's co-worker, whose husband is a military man, who said that they were leaving Kiev the other day, and this caused concern. One of the key beliefs was the probable suspension of air flights on the territory of Ukraine on February 15th to 16th and the fear of being left without the possibility of a leaving. Word after word, they came to the decisive point. Buy tickets. It will be easier for us when you are safe. We are not thinking about how to get you out of Kiev. Frankly, you will be a burden to us during the war, Mother said truthfully and at the same time with concern. The news hit me. It seemed that it was all panic and there was no need to rush. However, my parents stood their ground, and even though I was 19, I got used to listening to their warnings and wise instructions at important moments. The next evening, after a walk with my boyfriend, we returned home not far from Kiev. On the way to the village, there is a town where military people and Secret Service men live. Driving into that town is prohibited, and I have never seen cars drive in or out of it. But that evening was accompanied by so many cars that there was a traffic jam, the road was flashing with headlights, all the cars were heading towards the exit from Kiev, and this made us quite alarmed. Everything hinted at a war. So, on February 15th, my sister and I took the train. We came to Poland to stay with our uncle's wife and to take care of two brothers, Sahar, 8 years old, and sister Teresa, 6 years old. The days in Poland went on slowly. Every day I thought that I would return to Ukraine in a little while. Constant monitoring of the news did not comfort me, but I could not stop. At the same time, I felt like an insignificant person. All because there is no war, but I have already fled abroad, that is, I am a coward who is not able to protect the country. I was morally depressed and ready to go back with a sense of shame. My parents and I agreed on a 2-week trip to Poland, and I was just counting the days waiting for the vacation to end. Yulia, Boryspil was shelled, were the first words I heard from Nastya in a half-asleep state. My heart began to beat faster. I immediately got on the phone. I have never seen so much news in one night. Mom and Dad called us when they were stuck in a traffic jam. They were on their way home to the city of Radimishl. Everyone was scared and surprised. There were no words. Parents talked about kilometer-long queues at shops, gas stations, and ATMs. Panic spread among the people. The day passed imperceptibly and too stressfully. Parents arrived home around 6 to 7 p.m., having been on the road for about 10 hours, despite the fact that in peace. I was ashamed that I spend the night in a room near the windows, and most people are in basements, that I can buy food freely available, and my grandmother in the supermarket looks at the empty shelves. I felt guilty. Flipping through the Instagram feed, I came across an endless number of patriotic videos, photos of the armed forces of Ukraine. I had a desire to share these posts, but the fact that I am safe and it is not for me to share such information stopped me. I thought that everyone was condemning my act, that I was not worthy to experience the same way as others, because I had not seen these horrors with my own eyes. Although friends wrote that there is nothing wrong with this, on the contrary, they are glad that I left in time, but this did not convince me. Over time, I read about the syndrome of the rescued and realized that I am not the only one who feels this way and that it is normal. We talked to my parents every day. On the second day of the war, they arranged a room for themselves, in which they hid during air raids. The windows were taped, covered with pillows and covered with wooden panels, I think something like chipboard. In the photo of the room, which they posted, it is difficult to see what kind of boards they are. They brought a fire extinguisher, spread mattresses on the floor and put a large one on the side, so that in case of something, they could cover themselves with it and at least somehow protect from fragments. In the city, gas stations ran out of fuel, and the parents had only one thing left to do, to preserve the supply that was in the car's tank. In the evening, they observed the light regime, and as soon as it got dark, they turned off all the lights in the house, and had dinner by candlelight. The only comfort is a walk with our beloved dog Beam. We used to walk in the forest, but after the start of the war, my parents didn't go there. The police reported about the occupiers who were roaming around our city, so it was dangerous. Explosions coming from Makarov could be heard constantly. Each one was accompanied by a knock on the door from the pantry. It was said that it was difficult to sleep, especially the buzzing of the windows and the knocking. According to the descriptions, it's a sound like someone knocking on your window with a hand, deaf and creepy. The parents listened to every rustling, and every time they thought it was the invaders. One day the Wi-Fi disappeared, but the mobile internet worked. Communication was problematic, but real. The last straw was a shot-down rocket over Radimishl. As my mother described, I'm sleeping. I hear a very loud buzzing, as if something is flying into the house. I got scared, fell on the floor, looked for slippers and ran into the room with a blocked window. It was so scary that I thought it was over. After that, Mom went to relatives in Chernivtsi region, and Dad stayed at home to look after the house and pets. On 26th of February my sister and me were taken by our cousin Sergei from Poland to Denmark, and I live with him to this day. There are 4 of us living in the house. Me, Nastia, Sergei and cousin Alina. Every day I think about Ukraine and dream of returning home. Recently applied for permission to live, study and work in Denmark. We are waiting for an answer. At the moment, Russian troops have left the territory of Zhytomyr and Kiev regions. This makes me calm and not so afraid for my dad. I only worry about missile strikes and the armed forces. I am also looking for a job abroad and am waiting for the war to end soon. I realize that I am living in a historical moment and I am sure that Ukraine will win. Gratitude. I was angry with my parents when I was forced to leave the country, but now I am grateful. I thank my mother and father for their care and concern. I am grateful that I have such parents, although I rarely talk about it. I don't know who they are, psychics, secret agents or Freemasons, but convincing and sending us abroad was the right decision. It is truly a miracle to feel the danger to save us from war. Only parents can do that. This is their superpower. Yulia Kishkovska, 19 years old, student of the Optical Mechanical Vocational College of Taras Shevchenko Kyiv National University. A rocket flew into the house next to mine. I heard the explosions in my sleep, but I didn't pay any attention to it, probably because the start of a full-scale war seemed absurd to me. I was packing my briefcase when my mother came into the room and said several times that the war had started. It was strange to hear such a thing, and I didn't understand it the first time and even after. I will remember the second night forever, because a fragment of a rocket flew into the house next to mine. I woke up with horror. These 50 or 100 meters between two buildings and this crashed house became the occasion for my further thoughts about life and death. No one in our family knew what war is. Therefore, in the first days, fear and panic prevailed over everything else. In order to calm ourselves somehow, we rushed to look for information in social networks, mainly in Telegram channels. All this actually caused media addiction. The morning began with news and ended with an air raid alarm or news from the same Telegram channels. Optimism in the first days was added only by videos of captured or dead occupiers. Then came the understanding that this war is for a long time and I have to get used to it. The fear almost disappeared and reappeared only when rockets flew near the Pozniaky metro station. When fear was replaced by confidence and fighting spirit, I decided to overcome my addiction to Telegram channels and replaced them with Ukrainian war films. When our family made the final decision to evacuate Kyiv, another fear came, the fear of the unknown. Now I am glad that this is the most unjustified emotion during the entire period of the war. At the request of my uncle, who from the first days was in the local self-defense group, later on the front line, and even later wrote an article for an American newspaper, we left the house at 7 in the morning, taking with us one backpack each with clothes and documents, which was packed in half an hour before departure. The native city, the native district stood in completely different colors, or rather lost them, seemed empty and lifeless. And then I felt only pleasant surprise by the way we were greeted in Lviv. In Lutsk. How we were greeted by complete strangers here. Where I am now writing this text, lying on a soft bed, and not on a mat in the corridor, how I had to sleep at home to the dire wail of sirens. The retreat center, a building used by the Baptists for religious seminars or children's camps, became a second home for us. The people who organized the center did everything to make us all feel safe. Last year, I also took part in the press spring on the Dnieper slopes competition. I wrote a paper on the topic TikTok of the brain. The work was appreciated and I even received a special award. I must admit that during the war we all changed, which means that our thoughts and perception of this world changed. My opinion about this app has changed to the opposite. The main reason was the development of the Ukrainian language patriotic direction in this program. At that time, I called the main problem of TikTok content monotony, but we have talented and creative youth, and now there is almost no copying of content. Content is stolen only by Russians, whose "good morning, we are from Russia" is the icing on the cake of their worthlessness. Even in such trifles you can see the mentality of a nation, because whatever their history is, it is a house of cards made of lies. They say that events develop in a spiral. For some reason, I am sure that this unkind neighbor of ours will return again. But we will have a new, modern weapon, and one weapon that neither the enemy, nor even Europeans, didn't consider: the unity of our great people. That is why we will win now and in 100 years. Dmytro Kovalchuk, 16 years old, student of the Journalism for All ICAUN Press, the Kiev Palace of Children and Youth.
Without occupation. How we left Kherson. We left Kherson. Why? The approach of a humanitarian catastrophe as a result of the war, and most importantly, unwillingness to live under occupation. It's hard for me to believe, but it turns out that in our time there can be both war and occupation in the center of Europe. The second reason is the constant shelling of the city. Almost every night whole families sat in the basement. The first week we didn't even go upstairs. When a column of enemy vehicles drove past the windows of our house, roaring with terrible iron, we decided to leave our hometown. Our departure started badly. Evil Russians and Chechens did not let us go, accusing the soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine of killing Russians. But it's not us the ones who came to visit them with a special operation. We stood in line for a long time, but we returned home again. The next day we decided to go again. This time they let us pass. It was hard to leave home. We didn't know where to go. We were ready to live anywhere but in Russia. This country became forever hostile not only to our family. On the way from Kherson, we saw a burned factory where people from different cities of the region came to work. But we are sure we will definitely rebuild it, and also at the expense of orcs. Our road was blocked by many burned-out cars. The orcs spared no one, a gunned-down car with a piece of paper "children" on the windshield. Tears came to my eyes, but I could not cry. But there was also a lot of burned enemy equipment, and this gave us, albeit small, but still joy and hope for a return. At the checkpoints, we passed rather strict checks. Phones and bags were checked. We were lucky we were clean, and only after leaving the occupied territory were we able to breathe a sigh of relief, because this is Ukrainian free land. Now we live in Lviv. My sister Dashunya will be born here. Here, my father joined the local self-defense group. My summer vacation will be here. And then, we will live and dream of returning to our new house if it survives this incomprehensible and terrible war. I know one thing, we will never forgive Russia for their Russian peace. Anastasia Semenog, 13 years old, school and 31, Kherson.